The new entry-level paper towels will reportedly feature bold labels and guide markers clearly printed on the surface of each sheet, as well as a step-by-step instructional DVD in each package.
Make sure that your paper towel is directly on top of the stain and not beside the stain. Otherwise, you won't absorb any liquid. Place your paper towel directly on the stain and make a gentle wiping motion.
And in this week's local news, an area man knows that deep down, he's not done vomiting. In other news, Los Angeles residents are plagued by a roving pack of feral celebrities living in the Hollywood Hills. God wonders what happens to humans after they die. And a local dad clarifies that this is not a food stop. I was told early on that I would never be able to procreate, but I imagine the cold, dejected sensation I experience at the end of this news summary is similar to what a father feels when holding a child of his own flesh and blood.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Mark Edge.
Remotely, we have Mark in the studio. But are you able to say where you are in the world, Mark?
I'm in Florida.
Nice. Well, what have you been up to recently? Just staying in Florida, you're not doing ZA stuff?
It's the holidays, so I want to be where my son is, and it's been a lot of fun. He's back from a boarding school in Spain, and we're excited to start a new school year coming up, or school semester coming up here shortly.
Does he speak Spanish better than you now?
He does not speak Spanish better than I, but he is doing better.
Interesting. Well, thank you for being on tonight. This is looking like it could be our Thursday show for a while, and I hope the hosts or the viewers are happy to listen to Mark since he's a founder of the show.
I'm happy to be here.
I always like it when Mark's on the show. I must say, I've been missing him for a while now.
Yeah, and I've never been on with specifically you two. It's crazy how many combinations there are that I'm still...
Right. With what, 10, 12 hosts or whatever, the combinations speak quite large.
Yep. So the first thing that I brought in to talk about tonight is a Wall Street Journal article titled, "Why Doesn't Gen Z Want to Be All It Can Be?" And you may think that this is about Gen Z people not wanting to work or something, but it's actually a quite boomery, pro-war opinion piece from Wall Street Journal.
So it's why don't they want to sign up and catch bullets?
Right.
Well,
I see.
Can we define Gen Z real quick?
I want to say it's 1996 to, I think, 2010.
So, yeah, that's what I got. I just looked it up on Wikipedia.
Oh, really?
Mid-90s to early 2010s.
Because a lot of people say 1995, but I was born in 1996, and I feel like I can't completely relate to millennial or Gen Z completely, but I feel more like Gen Z than millennial.
So basically a 24-year-old to down to a 12 or 13-year-old would be a Gen Zer?
Well, I'm 27, and I was born in 96.
Okay, so a 26-year-old. So from a 13-year-old to a 26-year-old would be a right now, if you're listening to this live, that would be a Gen Zer right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that means that Bonnie might be Gen Z. She's a cusper, as it were. But my son Jack is definitely a Gen Z. But Bonnie's quite a bit older than he is. But he was taller than her at 12.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's a tall kid anyways.
He is.
Since I'm short, I get to be in Gen Z instead of millennial since I'm a cusper. But I just thought that title was so funny that it's so incredibly skewed towards being pro-war that you wouldn't even know what it was talking about. Why doesn't Gen Z want to be all it can be? And then the subtitle says, young Americans are skeptical of the military. That's a reason to worry about national security. It says, optimism was in the air at the 2023 Reagan National Defense Forum, where the annual survey of American opinion showed growing public support for defending Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion, which isn't good or optimistic to me. That sounds scary. I don't want to go to war against China.
I would not particularly like to do the same. I think that there's some things that the U.S. could do about that now that they choose not to do because they'd rather have the conflict than, say, some immigration. I mean, so if you want to pick one country, Taiwan's in the top several in the world that I'd say, you know what, let's have unrestricted migration from Taiwan. If the Taiwanese government needs a little land, saw them off a piece that the federal government has in Nevada and let them, move everybody there and rule over there. Whatever the case may be, there's no reason that American blood and billions of dollars needs to be shed over some rock in the Pacific. If it's the people, fine. But some chunk of land where the losing military of the losing government of a war 60, 70, 80 years ago, I don't even know. That doesn't make any sense. There's a solution to this that isn't our kids dying.
And, Taiwan, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's a super productive country. They produce a tremendous amount of stuff. So the culture of the Taiwanese people probably have excellent work ethic from what I can tell and are motivated and skilled. And we are really lacking motivation and skill right now in America. Big time.
It's kind of like Israel. It's like, why don't all countries just say, we'll take a certain amount and we'll take a certain amount? They wouldn't do that in, I don't know, the 30s after World War II or the 40s, whenever they had the Balfour Agreement and they just stole a piece of land and gave it to the Israeli people instead of
the Jews. Yep.
Yeah, instead of just letting them move wherever they wanted to in the world. That's kind of messed up.
Right, and leaving the Israel conversation out because I think it gets very, very complicated here. But I just want everyone to think about what it would have been like if the United States. Now, Israel is one of the most productive and prosperous countries in the world, while people are shooting missiles at them for the last 6 decades.
Well, they also get $14 billion a year in financial aid from the United States.
It's mostly just military stuff. So
they're also shooting their own
make it go kaboom.
Rockets too.
Yeah. I'm not claiming they're the good guys in all of this. I'm just saying that they've managed to be very successful.
Yep.
If the United States, because it's worth pointing out that FDR Roosevelt was a terrible racist. I mean, he just hated Jews, and he turned away the ship of the damned. You can look it up.
Yeah.
These people, nearly every one of them ended up dying in a concentration camp. He could have just said, open the doors, flung the doors open and said, Jews of the world, come to the United States. They ended up, many of them ended up here anyway, and we benefit as a result. As a group of people, these people have won more Nobel Prizes than any other group, and the United States would be better off had those people moved here rather than to Israel. And there wouldn't be this particular manufactured conflict that's going on. But this is what happens when you just, you get involved. People should be able to move from one place to another. And that's why I say we're making the same mistake with Taiwan right now. The United States would be better off if it let for whatever amount of Taiwanese people they could bring over here. And if you've got to make compromises to do it, make the compromises. It's better than losing your kid in some stupid war over a rock in the Pacific.
And it's funny because I don't know this for a fact or anything, but I think the same way as Jay was describing about the Taiwanese people, because I see made in Taiwan on so many things. I just think they're really productive, and I don't see any reason why it would be anything but a gain or a plus for us to bring them, some of them here who want to be here. I think the thing is, so many people are too attached to the specific rock that they live on, and I just can't understand.
I don't think the Taiwanese are too big on that. I mean, they've only been there for a little while. Basically, around World War II, that government was driven there. It was authoritarian for a long time. Now it's gone democratic, and they're very popular. I'd like to talk real quick about the Silicon Shield. Have you guys heard about this?
Silicon Shield?
The Silicon Shield. No. This is really important. So Taiwan, back in the 90s, decided, you know what? We're going to do something that's going to make it so we never get invaded. And they became the largest manufacturer. They're the only manufacturer, basically. I think you can do some in the United States, but more or less the biggest manufacturer of silicon microchips, computer chips, the good ones. Now, you can get some Chinese microchips that go in like cars so that they can get blown up in EMPs and all that kind of thing. But the kind of microchips that go into a computer, one that your laptop or whatever.
A high-quality racing drone. Right. My brother, he talks about this. He's really into racing drones, and he's like, Taiwanese, they make the best chips. They hold up. You can smash these things at like 60 miles an hour into a tree, and he's like, the computer's still good. It still works.
Wow.
And not only does the United States if Taiwan got invaded, they'd blow up these factories. And then the world would suffer as a result, including China. So they're trying to make it so that it's just impossible for them to be invaded. We'll see whether or not China's willing to, put the world back a decade as far as microprocessors go, just to get a rock in the Pacific. But they might just be.
Yep.
Well, I wonder with the Taiwanese. So one of the problems we have here in like the States is, and speaking like with Gen Z, for example, versus like boomers. So like my father-in-law, he's 74 years old, and
sounds like a boomer.
Yep. So he was a mechanical engineer. He worked in the Portsmouth nuclear power plant. He worked in when my wife was like 5 years old, the whole family lived in Italy for like 6 months because he was tooling up a nuclear power plant in Italy.
Wow.
So this is a guy that's got he's got the kind of experience that you can't buy. He's got the kind of skills that you can't buy because he did this job for like 35 years and he really enjoyed it. He grew up a farm kid in Vermont, so he earned his dopamine hits by accomplishing a job and a task well done. Mm-hmm. And then basically when I married his daughter, we bought this house that needed a ton of work. And he was 68 years old, and he showed up 3 days a week, and he worked with me, 7-8 hours a day. And he didn't climb ladders or anything. He didn't want to do that, but I was doing the grunt work.
It's understandable for a 69-year-old.
But like I would give him a measurement of a board, and Mark kind of understands the construction of my house a little bit. He's seen it, and
it's a geodesic dome, right?
Yeah, a geodesic dome. And so we had to replace I replaced 200 2x6s. I had to redo the entire roof. We put an eave on the roof on it so that the rain didn't hit the walls going down. Anyways, but he'd just had an answer for everything. Like I would still be, like a drooling idiot trying to work on his house basically without him. Like he was so valuable. So like all these farmers I deal with, guys that are making hay right now, they're all in their 70s. All the guys that are like raising livestock and cattle, they're all in their 70s. So, and I have another friend, Bob Anderson. He's Ernie Hancock's buddy. So if you guys who are listening to the show probably know who Bob Anderson is, and he worked for Power Verde, which is a nuclear power plant there just west of Phoenix. And like they're trying to call him back to work, from what I understand, because they just don't have any young men or young people like looking to like take on these jobs. We're gonna be in trouble. Just the fact that like the staff, there isn't like people just aren't interested in doing like working in a nuclear power plant, for example. Just not many of them like there was 50 years ago. And same thing with farming.
Jay, I don't want to. I agree with you, and I have the same concerns that you do. But I also have a concern that manufacturers and plants these days aren't willing to invest in people coming in. They're not willing to take a kid at 16 or 18 or 21 and begin training him to be the engineer that your father-in-law is.
Right.
They want him to come completely, packaged up and ready to go so that they can teach him a little bit so that he's ready. What they don't want to do is they don't want to go in and do that babysitting service that so long ago they were willing to do. Now, I'm not saying kids today are the same as kids were in 1960. Far from it. But I am saying that if they want people who are loyal to America, because right now, if you want to hire STEM, you're going to hire somebody who would not traditionally have looked like an American.
Right. Then what I was getting to with these folks from Taiwan, like, for example, are there 30-year-olds in Taiwan that, have these skills that like America's 70-year-olds have, for example? And, and the thing is, too, is like, so my father-in-law's generation and even like my generation, sort of, but like my father-in-law's generation, they knew how to drive a car at 13 years old. They knew how to adjust the points. They knew how to change spark plugs. They knew how to change a tire at 13 years old. His grandfather, at 9 years old, knew how to lube the axles on the horse-drawn wagon, knew how to fit the harness on the horse, knew how to put a shoe correctly on a horse. My wife has no idea how to use a clutch. Right.
Yeah.
She just what they consider a manual transmission as a millennial anti-theft device.
Matt taught me how to use one last year, but I kind of think I need more practice. But I also learned how to jump a car 2 days ago or yesterday, and that was pretty easy. That was really easy, but I'd just never done it before. I know how to get a boyfriend, so.
Right. Well, I kind of think that that's one of the things about your wife. Your wife can do a lot of things, Jay.
Oh, yes,
The fact that she can't, lube an axle on a horse-drawn carriage might be, might be something she's leaving for her husband.
Well, I that might be a bad example, but like what I was saying. So like today, nowadays, like I know so many young men in their 20s that have no interest in driving a car. They don't want a car. They don't have a car.
That's so weird.
Especially like the ones that all grew up in the cities. And like there's a handful of these guys from California who moved here for the Free State Project that like they never drove a car until they got to New Hampshire. And they're terrified of these cars. But like, the kid in the 60s, when my father-in-law was, like a teenage boy, he was just, if he could get on anything that had a tractor, a car, whatever, I mean, he was just really, really eager to do that. The young men today, they're not eager to like, get on a tractor or, and most of them aren't. Like some of the rural kids and the homeschool kids are into it. But they didn't see. A lot of them aren't getting this example when they're like 3-4 years old. Like my kids, my 3-year-old daughter can totally operate the forklift that I have from my lap.
Wow.
She can totally operate my John Deere 310 backhoe. It's got an automatic. Well, she can't totally operate it, but she can do all the hand controls. She can't reach the clutch or the brakes, but like she can steer it like with precision. We cannot. I let her use a joystick, and we put a round bale spike on the front bucket, and she can totally like pick up the round bales with really good precision. In my homeschool co-op, there's this Warner who's 6 now, but Warner this summer at 5 years old. It's actually Jeremy Kaufman's son. He's sitting on my lap in the backhoe, and he's operating the joystick. He's shifting it forward and reverse, just like my daughter. But those kids are like really thirsty and into that stuff when they're that age.
Because they're homeschooled, the Kaufman kids.
But when they're when they're thirsty for that kind of stuff, and then the parents just pacify them with an internet device, for example, which has kind of happened with all these Gen Zers had, high-speed internet available to them, and it became a pacifier and a babysitter, for those kids. They never got wired into their brain like, hey, I want to drive the tractor, for example.
Right. I think I think you say it all the time, and I think you're exactly right. It's the dopamine hits. Is that, if you've got an iPad and you're playing Fruit Ninja, everything else sucks.
Yes.
It just sucks. And it's true. I'm like, my son can do the things that you say, that you talk about. He's been through your man camp, and thank you for that.
Oh, nice.
But I had to drag him in many cases through all of this. I mean, he started driving with me, same as your kid, at like 6 years old, and he would sit on my lap and we'd drive up the driveway, and it was a longer driveway. So he got a little bit of driving time, and we'd switch over. But I mean, I think that I think this generation's smart in a way. It's a hell of a lot nicer just to sit in the back seat and let mom take you wherever you want to go.
Wait, so your son who's like 15, like even now he doesn't want to drive?
He doesn't particularly want to drive. He does, but he doesn't want to. Like why would he want to drive himself to school or to the Dungeons and Dragons meetup?
Well,
or
that's
whatever
making
it
me
is.
feel more millennial, I guess, because I feel like everyone my age, including myself, really wanted to drive ourselves to school and just
There were a lot
be
of
like,
kids.
look, I have keys.
In your group, there were a lot of kids that wanted to ride single gear bicycles. The hipster, the phenomenon that went on.
The BMX bike.
Yeah, and they'd wear flannels and have a beard and a little beanie toque, and they didn't want cars. But I think that it's gotten worse.
And a cultural difference is like with, Bonnie, for example, you didn't grow up in like an urban area, did you? Or a
I
city?
grew up in it. I kind of had in both. I grew up in a huge suburb of San Antonio with a huge class. And then the last year of high school moved to the middle of absolute nowhere. So like when I'm thinking of like my bigger class in close to San Antonio, I don't think of them as not wanting to drive, but they're more like skateboarding and stuff like that too, but I still think they also wanted to drive.
So was there a bit of a car culture? Because with more like suburban people have to drive cars, for example, and a lot of people who are versus city people who are riding the subway or getting in a taxi or whatever, or just walking to work. The kids don't really see their parents like driving in cars if they're growing up in the cities.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't know about that. Because even San Antonio, like you have to drive a car. It's just not that type of a city.
Right.
So
you grew up watching your parents, for example, drive cars.
Yeah.
If you were like in LA, for example, that was probably like less happening with, and the idea of driving a car in LA, from what I understand, I've never been there, is utterly miserable.
Like
well,
traffic,
it's miserable, but almost everybody does it.
Well,
Okay.
in like New York City, my only friend who's about my age who doesn't have a driver's license and never has is from New York City. So
yeah, so
I know they don't really drive there.
New York City's difficult for cars.
Our host, Aria, is a millennial, and she doesn't like driving in big cities. Now, she'll drive, but she's not a fan of...
Yeah, but she's from Mississippi, so I could see that. Because like I had to get used really fast when I moved back to San Antonio to driving in a crazy amount of cars moving around and like big highways and stuff like that. And I'm like part millennial, I guess. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think kids even younger than me are the only ones that just don't want to drive when they have the opportunity. Because like when I was in high school, anybody who had a car was cool because like you could be picked up to go hang out with your other friends and not be like stuck at your house. I think people were less stuck to the internet back then, even though Facebook was around. Like, I don't know, when I was in high school in like 2013 through 15. 603-283-6160. You can get in on the conversation with us if you call that number. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks, Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident is not being treated as a terror attack. Our Europe correspondent Ross Cullen has been following this developing story.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas.
No breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations as diplomats struggle to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza. Council members have been meeting behind closed doors, but there hasn't been a vote, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
It's been days of negotiations, with many diplomats seemingly frustrated that the vote has not taken place yet. At the heart of the delays are apparent disagreements by the US on the text, with one sticking point being the demand that the UN set up a monitoring mechanism to facilitate the aid in and out of Gaza. The US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Hood, has reportedly said, "We're still working at it, but we aren't there yet." Meanwhile, as this all unfolds, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the intense fighting, lack of electricity and limited fuel has severely restricted the UN's efforts to provide life-saving aid to the people in Gaza.
And in India, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the largest mass suspension ever of parliamentarians there. Neha Punia has the details from New Delhi.
With opposition benches inside Parliament wearing a deserted look, several leaders held a demonstration outside, holding placards that read, "Save Democracy." They say the suspensions are a mark of a dictatorship. Prime Minister Modi and his Home Minister Amit Shah, who oversees the security of Parliament as well as national security, have rejected the opposition's demand for them to address the House over the security breach. They say a probe is underway and they're taking the issue very seriously.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FS.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you that this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash. Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO, that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. And thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn more about Dash. Dash.org. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And it's me, Mark Edge, remotely.
And Libertariat here in the chat server on Element that we have, has told me the article that we're discussing is called "Why Doesn't Gen Z Want to Be All It Can Be?" Because the Army's recruiting slogan used to be all that you can be."
Be all that you can be.
That was really
in the Army.
Oh, wow.
Or something to that effect. I'm sorry, I'm not a great singer, but it's the
I've never
general
heard that.
notion.
I hadn't heard of that before, so I thought it was just that. I thought they just made it up and they were that pro-war, I guess.
Well, the first thing that it was associated with this other marketing line is we do more by 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. I'm not exactly sure, 9 a.m. than most people do all day. And, that's how you get to be all that you can be in the Army.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, and you also have to support killing people just because your government tells you to.
Not in the 80s. I mean, like in the 80s, all they did was invade Grenada.
I thought that they had, I don't know. They didn't have some stuff that killed
I think
people?
in like 88 or something, there was the first Persian Gulf conflict or something, but it wasn't real. It wasn't much of a war, I guess.
I definitely judge people a lot less for joining the Army in the 80s and even the mid 90s, or judge them less for joining the military back then than now. Nowadays, after 9/11, it's just so obvious how bad it is. And it's just so easy to get on the internet and learn things that I kind of judge you.
Well, I mean, they get people to sign up at 17 and they promise them the world. And in many cases, they don't deliver. And they certainly don't tell you that you're going to have limbs that are going to get blown off for, nothing. And they don't talk about how the what you lose in a war isn't worth the loss. That whatever it is, you can just go back war after war after war, and you can say, this death, it didn't mean anything. It didn't move the needle forward. I'm sure there's some amazing guys that moved the needle forward and that their death was meaningful in a war, but the vast majority of them, it just doesn't make a big difference. And one of the problems they're saying here in this article, if it's the same one that I read, is that Gen Z wants to get paid. And, if they're asking for my life, they're asking me to put my life on the line. And we're talking about, some paycheck a little bigger than McDonald's. I'd rather be a fry cook than a bullet catcher.
Yeah.
And Gen Z is pretty soft. Like I was having a conversation with a 13-year-old young man the other day, and he's a little soft, and I'm like, how many push-ups can you do? And he just looks at me like, he didn't want to answer me. I'm like, so, you should be able to do like, at least 10, I would think. He's like, no, I can't do a push-up.
Well,
and like, really? And I'm like, you got to start doing some push-ups, man. Something.
Oh, I couldn't do push-ups. I don't even know if I could do a push-up right now because Ian and I kind of lagged working out like 2 weeks before he got sent to jail, and now all of a sudden it's been like 3 months or something. No, 2 months since he went to jail, and I haven't worked out the whole time. But I had to start off doing wall push-ups because I just thought it was stupid to work out or something. I don't know if that's a Gen Z thing. I thought it was stupid to work out, and then
it isn't all Gen Z. It isn't all generation. Like I said, before, it's like cultural. So like the kids that grew up around, farming, the kid that went to grandpa's farm or was raised on a farm, for example, or was in the woods, had some forest land, right next to where they live. They were doing firewood, for example, because they were heating with firewood. Those kids were always chopping trees down. They were stacking wood, stacking hay. And like, but definitely when I was like 13 years old, I could do like 60 push-ups, no problem. When I was 17 years old, I could squat 300 pounds in high school. But, I was, and me and all my buddies that were like, working, doing the farm stuff, cleaning stalls, pushing wheelbarrows, like with a couple 100 pounds of, manure. When I was a teenager, we had like 27 stalls at the farm, and they all had to be cleaned every single day. And so we were always recruiting other teenage kids to help, and those kids that were doing that work, they got strong and they were pretty solid.
Well, That definitely wasn't me. And yeah, that it does have a lot more to do with culture than like just generation. In fact, generation itself, it doesn't mean a lot to most people because like there's nothing that you can say about every single person from any certain generation. But
yeah, but I mean, I do feel some when somebody talks to me, like, you know, somebody talks to me about, hey, I had to go change the channel for my dad while he was watching TV, versus, you know, a kid that grew up playing Fruit Ninja. I think there's, you know, there's something there. You know that there's this sort of difference, and I'm not willing to say that there's not many generations alive that are hard as leather left. You know, the ones that were are getting a little older, and you know, I mean, Gen X, and we're latchkey kids. I mean, we could handle ourselves, but a lot of them didn't work that hard. I mean, Jay knows far more about engines, for instance, than I do, and I think that's just where he's from and, you know, what he learned, and he's got to be 10 years younger than me.
And I would say joining the military is something that keeps you from learning like actually important skills. Like we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. Everything is maybe it was a show with me and you and Joa from a couple weeks ago, but we were talking about how the military kind of like you don't learn everything about something. You don't go and become an actual engineer. Wait, what am I trying to say? Not engineer. Like somebody works on or like electrician. You just learn like your one little electrician skill or a couple of skills,
right? And
then they have the next person.
Compartmentalized.
That's
so
the word.
Each guy has his own specific skill or trade that he does, and that's you know, a very much, you know, a team mentality, and it fails if, you know, a few of the guys are missing or many of the guys are missing. It's kind of like the slaughterhouses when they started you know, doing the COVID testing, and when the undocumented folks who work at these big corporate, you know, mega slaughterhouses that are doing like 10,000 hogs a day, when 10% of the workforce doesn't show up, it goes down to like 20% capacity, because, you know, all these guys have these specialized things that they do in that slaughterhouse, and the other guys don't know how to like take up that slack and do that. But also when it comes to like farming, for example, farmers and loggers, fishermen, also these guys have to do like everything. They got to like fix the engine. They got to like, you know, doctor the cow. They got to, you know, go out there and, you know, work the land and plant the seeds and, you know, whatever, you know, they got to do like everything. They got to fix the roof because they generally can't afford to hire someone to fix the roof. You know, they got to maybe do some plumbing and some electrical work because they just got to get it done right now. And so that's kind of how I grew up, you know, just learning how to do all these things, you know, right there with my dad, for example. So
that's definitely something that I feel like people who have any sort of just a regular job nowadays, they can't just learn to do everything because they've got to do their job, and then they pay other people to do other stuff. So I don't know if it's necessarily bad. Like I can't say it's bad. Like I'm not a jack of all trades, you know, but I just think that's how society has caused us to be now.
Yeah, kind of like insects.
Insects?
Kind of like insects, compartmentalized. Each insect has
compartmentalized. Yeah,
it has its own little job.
I always thought it was kind of weird. That's like the Utah motto is worker bee.
that is scary.
It's weird.
You know what I'm concerned with is that America isn't producing certain types of laborers, and you know what's going to happen. I don't know. I don't have any answers for you as to how it's going to happen.
Should just open the borders.
That's why I'd like to import some of these Taiwanese folks. It sounds like, you know, those guys are there and they're young.
Well, I like the Taiwanese thing. I'd say about border opening is that you've got to be prepared whenever you make a political. You know, they're doing this right now in Washington. They're trying to figure things out, and nobody's going to go for the libertarian solution to everything. And there's some good reasons not to. I would say the good reason not to make a libertarian choice is because we don't live in a libertarian world. And if you just open up the border and say, hey, come on, everybody in here, vote and take all the welfare there is.
Yeah.
And you've really got to say things like, hey, you come across this border, you're not getting a penny of U.S. taxpayer money. You come across that border and you'll never be able to vote in a U.S. election. You can send an absentee ballot back home, and I'm fine with that, but you're not voting here. And that, I think that those are some reasonable solutions that a worker coming from Honduras, for instance, would be like, I can never vote, and I will, never get a penny from the United States government. No problem. I'm coming. And you'd find that the people who want to come at that point aren't the layabouts that are just going to, take a government check or get a little card that gets loaded with money. They're gonna work.
When I worked in Colorado from like 2013 to 2016, I worked with a whole bunch of these guys that were probably some of the best people I got to know. In fact, they were far better. They had better morals, better work ethic, than like most of the white guys I was working with. The Mexican fellas. They would show me pictures of their grandma. They would show me pictures of their kids, how proud they, like the one guy, Julio, his son's 7 years old, and he's running a skid loader, stacking hay on a semi truck, the 4x4 by 8 foot bales, and like the kid could do it like just as good as any adult could.
Wow.
And they were very proud of that stuff, to where the third and fourth generation Mexican guys and even the white guys, they were like, oh man, I'm going to spend my tax return on a, set of rims for my, Pinto or whatever. And, I'm going to, look at this hoe I slayed, from Tinder, kind of things. And like, but the Mexican guys that were undocumented, that were there to work hard, I often say it's the kind of guy I would want my daughter to marry, because they just got good cultural ethics and morals, and their priority was their family. It wasn't like consumerism and nonsense.
Yeah, I say that most of the illegal immigrants that I've met from, I think I've only ever met any from Mexico. Like a lot of people like to say there's all these South Americans coming over the border, but I lived in San Antonio, Texas, and was out of my house every single day, way more than I am here, and I only ever met Mexican illegal immigrants, and all of them are like about family, and they were about working really hard and stuff like that. And I never met anybody who was just a layabout. And the other thing is, I wasn't so libertarian, and I looked into how to get my Mexican illegal immigrant welfare at one point, and at least it wasn't very obvious. I couldn't figure out any way to get somebody without a social security card welfare, because he was just working so hard doing like stupid jobs, and it's just like, I don't know. During COVID, everything went really crazy, and he had to like get fired from a job. But it doesn't matter. I just think that people really think that there are all these people coming from Mexico just to sit around in a ugly city instead of their, place they're from that's way more beautiful with organic food and their grandma that they care about. And they just want to sit on a couch here in an ugly city in the United States, and I just don't really think that's the case. Like maybe
I think they're coming, and at least in Honduras, what they complain of is that there's a lot of Hondurans leaving, and that the best of their labor force is going to the United States. Now, that's a good sign, right? Like the United States is getting the best of the Honduran labor force, and that would be something that I would be looking forward to. But I think the easiest way to get welfare is from what I've heard is to have a kid, right? And then the kid gets the welfare. And the kid's an American citizen getting the welfare, and that sort of thing. And I think that's wrong too. I don't think American taxpayers should have to pay just because somebody's had a kid on terrestrial soil. I think that's outrageous, to be honest. But at that point, they're just taking the money that they're earning, and they're going to send more back to Abuela in Honduras, which is, it's a reasonable thing to do. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you're putting out a bowl of cat food every morning, and then you're getting upset that stray cats are coming by and eating your cat food. You're insane, and it's not the cat's fault.
Yeah, as long as we have welfare here, we're going to have people overdosing from drugs that are on welfare, because all the people are overdosing. All the first responders I've asked, I said, hey, out of all the people that you're Narcaning or dead bodies you're picking up, are they all on welfare? And 100% of the time now, the answer is yes. They all have an EBT card, every one of them. And what we end up finding is, one guy said, we don't find an EBT card right away, but once we put all the information into they're doing a death certificate kind of thing, then they find out that they were receiving benefits from Health and Human Services. So basically, right here in America, we can't have an open border right now with the welfare program. I mean, the welfare is a problem. So if we got rid of all the welfare, you're not going to have drug addicts overdosing, after, this round that's out there kills themselves. And you're not going to have people coming into this country specifically for the welfare programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, welfare is the problem ultimately, and if we just got rid of welfare, that'd fix so many problems. It would be ridiculous. After probably a time of like unrest or whatever, like chaos, and then it would be better.
Well, what would happen is all these people who are essentially useless right now that are collecting welfare, just getting high because, that's what they choose to do and they're incentivized to do it through the welfare program. Mm-hmm. They will either die or they will be like, wow, I need to actually take care of myself and I'm hungry now. And, and I believe, if you cut welfare out here in New Hampshire, like because everybody can carry a gun in New Hampshire and the cities, aren't like crazy and there's like pretty much no violence in New Hampshire compared to anywhere else in the country. What would happen is if these guys got a little stupid and started doing some stuff like, breaking and entering or trying to rob the liquor store, they're just going to get shot and this problem's going to take care of itself real quick. But New York City, where law-abiding citizens can't even defend themselves, I think there would be some serious mayhem. It would be like, one of these zombie movies where they're just all going crazy, all the tweakers because they couldn't get the money.
I hate seeing those videos of people just running into stores and stealing stuff. I have no clue where that kind of thing is happening, but
places you can't own guns.
San Francisco.
LA, right. San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, right. Baltimore.
Did you see the Sikh guy that got in trouble for hitting somebody with a broomstick? I mean, it's not even it's a broomstick. The thin kind.
Was
I mean,
he
if
like
you
the
really hit him,
gas station owner?
Broke.
That guy?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah,
It was
in
I saw
California.
that video, but I didn't know he got in trouble.
Yeah, they were charging him for assault and battery or something, and he was just defending the store.
The guy was going around destroying everything, though, or at least stealing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw it a while ago.
Assaulting an awful person.
Yeah.
Like it used to be, you could hit a guy with a stick if he stole your stuff.
Yeah.
But not in America now.
Well, some places in America, there's you have stand your ground. So this isn't legal advice, but definitely some places, if somebody walked into your store and started acting threatening and crazy, and you felt you were in harm, and you pulled out your gun and you put a bullet in them, the police are going to come, and the coroner's going to come mop up the mess. They're going to say, "Thank you, sir. We're sorry for your problems," and you go walk away. To where like New York City, the guy comes in there, or California, the guy comes in there, trashes the place, pulls out a gun, and you shoot him. You're going away.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it seems like there's not much one can do in certain places. I don't know what it's like in California, but I can say I visited a couple of years ago. It was pre-COVID, so a few years ago, and my uncle lives out there, and we're like, well, let's go to San Francisco because what do tourists do? And he's like, he and his family are like, are you kidding? No way. We don't want to go to San Francisco. Why don't we go to the aquarium in Monterey? And it was very nice. We got to see some dolphins and some otters and some seals and stuff, and that was great. But apparently Californians don't want to take visitors to San Francisco anymore, and that used to be the place to go.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, I don't know how we got onto that topic at all, but we were talking about how anti-war is Gen Z, and I want to get into the numbers here. At an event I had never heard of before called the 2023 Reagan National Defense Forum, they apparently show people the results of this survey of American opinion, and it showed that overall there is growing public support for defending Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. The survey also revealed, though, high levels of support for continued assistance to Ukraine and Israel. It found that most Americans are confident in the armed forces, support increases to the defense budget, and view the U.S. military as superior to China's. As Roger Sakim, director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Institute, put it, our survey shows that Americans remain resolved, like President Reagan was, to support those defending freedom around the world. Yet the survey's results also forecast dark clouds on the horizon, according to this person who wrote this, because they love the military and war. Vast and expanding gaps between how the youngest and oldest Americans think about international affairs point to contentious times ahead. Consider Taiwan. more than 75% of those over 65 years old say they would support economic sanctions, relocating American military assets, and sending military equipment if the Chinese invade. Less than...
War is old men talking and young men dying.
And it's crazy. Like, that's not a new...
Nope. It's not even a new saying.
Yeah, but it's way worse now. So over 75% of those over 65 just support that stuff, but less than 50% of those under 30 favor these same responses.
Well, and also, so the younger generation has, been easily able to see what the real effects of war are due to the communication we have that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago. The fact that, you get in, for example, with the Ukraine thing, there's all these videos that came out of Ukraine because every soldier, every civilian is a journalist now. Essentially, they all have a camera on their phone, and everybody's got a phone. So this is not like in Vietnam where there was, or Korea War, there was very little instant media that came out, and everything was super, super censored.
Yeah.
Whatever came out of those, because it had to go through these channels, and the only way you got to see it was on like NBC or ABC or something. And today it's just, it's an Instagram reel or whatever.
That's so true. The government was able to control what people believed was going on in Vietnam so much more. Like, we read about Henry, was that his name? Henry Kissinger? Yep. Apparently he was very influential in making people believe that, this is what's going on in Vietnam, whether it was true or not, just to get, I think it was Lyndon B. Johnson elected, whoever it was that he was working with. No, it was Nixon. He wanted to get Nixon elected. So more people died because they supported the war because of what Kissinger said. And nowadays it'd be a lot harder to do that type of a thing because people have access to phones in their pockets and the internet. So...
And people are also understanding, too, more than ever, the only reason all these wars are even happening, that America is meddling in and starting, and they're funding their enemy a decade ahead of time, so they have an enemy. And the number one reason for war is to keep the U.S. dollar as world reserve currency. So every country that becomes a terrorist nation, previously said, we're not going to trade in dollars, or we're trying to use gold or something else.
And I just don't think a lot of people my age want to go die over keeping the U.S. dollar on top and having oil. 603-283-6160. You can get in on the conversation with us. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident is not being treated as a terror attack. Our Europe correspondent Ross Cullen has been following this developing story.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas.
No breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations as diplomats struggle to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza. Council members have been meeting behind closed doors, but there hasn't been a vote, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
It's been days of negotiations, with many diplomats seemingly frustrated that the vote has not taken place yet. At the heart of the delays are apparent disagreements by the US on the text, with one sticking point being the demand that the UN set up a monitoring mechanism to facilitate the aid in and out of Gaza. The US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Hood, has reportedly said, "We're still working at it, but we aren't there yet." Meanwhile, as this all unfolds, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the intense fighting, lack of electricity and limited fuel has severely restricted the UN's efforts to provide life-saving aid to the people in Gaza.
And in India, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the largest mass suspension ever of parliamentarians there. Neha Punia has the details from New Delhi.
With opposition benches inside Parliament wearing a deserted look, several leaders held a demonstration outside, holding placards that read, "Save Democracy." They say the suspensions are a mark of a dictatorship. Prime Minister Modi and his Home Minister Amit Shah, who oversees the security of Parliament as well as national security, have rejected the opposition's demand for them to address the House over the security breach. They say a probe is underway and they're taking the issue very seriously.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the process behind the delayed efforts to vote on a draft resolution about Gaza at the United Nations Security Council. Conversations have been going on for days now, with multiple layers of negotiations about the language contained in the draft resolution. So how does the whole system work? Sir Kim Darroch is a former UK ambassador to the United Nations.
They're put together by someone putting a draft forward, and there are 15 members of the Security Council, and that draft gets discussed both collectively and individually with those 15 members. If people ask for amendments, the drafters, which is sometimes just one country, will then have to decide whether they're going to change to bring that country on board. The risk always being if you get one on board by changing the draft, you lose someone else. And that will usually go on for 3 or 4 days, and then it culminates in a public session. The various ambassadors, the representatives of the Security Council states sit around, they vote, and then they explain their vote. And it's the explanation of vote that sets out why countries have taken the position they've taken.
Of course, the devil is always in the wording of the draft resolutions, and no more so than when it comes to the thorny issue of the Middle East, which is why the UN has taken so long to get to an agreed text.
Our top stories again. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident in the Czech capital is not being treated as a terror attack. And no breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations. Diplomats struggling to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Higher in Washington.
The nation's quadriplegics immobilized on Washington in support of stem cell research. And a Penn State t-shirt is awkwardly looked away from. And now for the weekly feature your fragile, susceptible mind already has your lips salivating for. This is The Onion Week in Review. Sources reported today that 10-year-old Brandon Thomas, who is currently homesick at his friend Kevin's sleepover, needs to just tough it the fuck out.
I don't feel like playing Xbox right now.
The pathetic little bitch who claims he just doesn't feel like eating any birthday cake or joining in any activities with his friends, frankly needs to grow a pair because his parents only live 10 minutes away, for Christ's sake. Here's what the whiny pansy had to say for himself.
I wasn't crying. It's just allergies. I want to go home.
What a f***ing wuss. In other news, a voicemail from mom is deleted 3 words in, and a man with nice eyes is blown. All right, now off with you. I can't have you seeing me like this. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number that you can call to get in on the conversation with us. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark.
And Jay has an announcement he'd like to talk to you about. He's going to be at Anarchapulco this year.
So, yes, from February 11th to the 16th in beautiful Acapulco, Mexico, is the Anarchapulco Conference, which is just a collection of anarchists talking about, basically helping you be a better anarchist, let's say. So I'm going to be there talking about investing in our posterity. I'm going to be talking about the solutions for Generation Next to earn their dopamine hits, so they're useful, competent adults that have a drive and a desire to, want to just do things and get things done and have pride of accomplishment. And also there's an event right afterwards, which I will be attending at and hopefully presenting some kind of man camp workshop called Agraforco. That goes on from the 16th to the 25th. But go to anarchapulco.com and check out, what's going on. There's going to be a bunch of great speakers. And if you use coupon code J at checkout or when you order your tickets, you'll get a 10% discount. That's anarchapulco.com and coupon code J. And it's going to be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it. You'll be able to meet me, my wife, and my kids. We'll all be down there for it.
Excellent. Mark's been to Anarchapulco. I've never been there. They changed it up, though.
Yeah, it's a great event, or at least when I went, I wouldn't be able to say what it's like now. It's been a few years, but it sounds like it's a lot of fun. I get the emails, and it looks great. I'd love to go this year, but it looks like, as far as family stuff goes, that won't be possible.
Yeah, they do it outdoors now instead of in a giant hotel, and that looks kind of nice.
Yep.
Well, moving on from the article, we were talking the last segment about Gen Z, the youngest generation. Well, I guess the second youngest, because children are something else. They're like alpha generation. But Gen Z is very anti-war compared to the boomers and Gen X and millennials. That's what we're talking about. But moving on, Jay brought in this article from ZeroHedge.com. and it's titled, I'm going to red pill you about vegetable oils. And do you guys know what red pilling means? Could you explain it to the listeners?
You'd like me to explain it?
Sure.
So red pilling is, comes from the Matrix.
Mhm.
You can take the blue pill and you can go back to sleep in the Matrix. Or you could take the red pill and you can be awake
Mhm.
and realize all the stuff that's going on. And the reality is there's a lot of people who cannot handle the red pill.
Yeah.
So basically the red pill's the truth, and some people just can't handle the truth. And, this red pill about these seed oils, seed oils are like super destructive to your health
I agree.
for a multitude of reasons. And part of my Investing in Our Posterity lecture series that I'm working on is talking about seed oil and health and, nutrition from a standpoint of, when you have young calves and young piglets, is you want to feed them like really good, nutritiously dense food. And then what I'm noticing with a lot of parents, and I've noticed this for years, is like a lot of parents will, give their kids garbage like cereal. There is no good cereal you can feed your kids as far as I'm concerned. All cereal is just processed, refined garbage and has a bunch of seed oils in it.
And it has a bunch of extra added iron and
Folic acid, which is really bad stuff. And then
in a bad form. You can crush up cereal, take a magnet, and get a little piece of metal.
yeah, you can get a lot. You can get a lot of iron dust.
Did you see a video of that?
Yeah, you can look that up.
Huh.
Oh yeah,
Guess
so
they should.
So like the augers in the grain mill, for example, they're all metal and they wear as they're moving, and then when they so they auger the grain, the grain gets augered in the combine. It gets augered from the combine to the seed tender. It gets augered, from the seed tender into a truck. It gets dropped into an auger at the grain mill, and it gets augered up these elevators. It's all metal on metal, and they wear and they fatigued. And one of my jobs when I worked in Colorado was like the combine, the seed tender. We were constantly replacing wear plates in them.
Wow, I thought
because
it was
they would wear out.
That was just the stuff that they added. I thought that was the quote unquote enriched.
Yeah,
it
maybe they
gets
do add it and they just call it a feature.
Yeah.
Well, and there is all kinds of stuff added too, but I tell you, there's a lot of there's a lot of metal shavings, metal dust, metal particulate in anything that goes through a commercial grain mill.
Wow, that's kind of creepy now that I know it's from that, but I'm definitely very red-pilled on vegetable oils. What about you, Mark?
If I could just cut added sugar, then I'd work on the next thing. But I've been trying to do that for a while.
Let me. So this article, I didn't really read the entire article yet, but one of the first things that really woke me up about seed oils is Crisco, for example, is
Soybean
referred
oil.
to as diabetes in a bottle. So your body reproduces red blood cells. The most cells that get reproduced are red blood cells. They get changed out all the time. And red blood cells carry nutrients, around to your body, bring nutrients to your cells, and they also remove waste. So when you're consuming anything that's like fried in seed oil, anything that has a hydrogenated oil, so this is basically all of your fast foods, anything that's, you go to even a local mom and pop deli, and they got a grill there, a griddle, and they're dumping Crisco on it or shortening or something or spraying it with Pam. This is the hydrogenated oil. Well, when your body consumes this hydrogenated oil, it actually uses the hydrogenated oil as cell building blocks for your red cells. So your cell membranes are essentially made from the hydrogenated oils instead of like the cholesterol. So like
butter, like if they used butter.
Right, butter or meat or whatever, but like instead of like real cholesterol that's like from animal fat, for example, or even like avocado or coconut oil, which is very stable and pretty good. They're not really considered seed oils because they don't. Well, for a multitude of reasons, they can be just pressed. A lot of like your canola oil and stuff is, and soybean oils and things like that. They're
Speller pressed, isn't that bad?
Well, it's like a chemical reaction. Like they use petroleum-based chemicals to sort of extract, to refine the oil into a usable, like what your food grade oil isn't. Anyways, when you're eating fried food once a day, or even a couple times a week, your body is now manufacturing its red blood cells from the cell membranes of this hydrogenated oil. And what happens is your red blood cells can no longer absorb sugar. Like, it's really hard for them to absorb sugar. So
See, I just to explain kind of to the listeners what this all means, what I learned, just to make it really simple, is sugar's not really bad for you. I'm red-pilled on sugar, unlike Mark, apparently. Sugar's not really bad for you if you're not eating the seed oils. And I have been subsisting on nothing but our friend Lori, who is on the show sometimes, baked goods and ice cream and stuff that's really easy to eat because I'm just like don't have very much energy and I have all of Ian's work to do. I'm eating so much sugar and I'm teetering between 2 digits and 1 digits in weight in pounds, and I'm not fat. I think that it's all about, you can eat
Hold
sugar.
on. You mean 2 digits and 3 digits in weight?
Yeah, what did I say? 2 digits.
1.
Well, okay, sorry. No, 9.
You're somewhere between 11
pounds.
and 9 pounds.
No, sorry. Sometimes I'm 99 pounds and I'm not fat while I eat all this sugar. It's because I try not to eat as many seed oils as possible. I was accidentally eating some a couple weeks ago and that was pissing me off. But I do want to go.
a little more about this real quick.
I think you should hold on,
I'll hold on, yep.
and we'll go to the caller because I don't want to make him wait too long. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Well, I like to chew bubble gum and talk about Morazon, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
What do you have to say about Morazon, and what is that?
So, Ciudad Morazon, also known as Bootstrap City, is the leading free private city in the world. So this is a privately owned city that has the autonomy that a government would typically have. So that includes tax powers, private police, private roads. Who will build the roads? The private cities will.
Excellent. So this is in Honduras, right? And Mark, you've been there.
This is Alex, my good friend, and I asked him to listen, and he can't help himself to call in about Morazon. And I'm excited. I have an article here about Morazon that I wanted to share. So it's a nice lead in. But Alex, I think it's worth mentioning, what's the difference between a private city and any other city that people might be thinking about?
A typical city is run democratically, and you have no stability in what will happen. Your property taxes could change, the zoning regulations. Maybe some pandemic happens, and all of a sudden you can't go to your gym anymore without wearing a mask because the city said so. So that's the typical city. It's run by democratic means, by public officials, where a private city is the landowner runs the city.
And what happens if you get somebody you don't like in a private city? I mean, people here in the Free State Project in New Hampshire, they think to themselves, well, we really can't help who comes to be part of our project. But what happens in Morazon or Bootstrap if that happens?
Yeah, so we have 0 homeless people in Bootstrap City, and this will always be the case because the only way you can live here is if you rent here.
That makes sense. There's no welfare in Morazon City. See, that's in my dream private city in New Hampshire that I talk about a lot. I'm always saying I will just ignore the federal and the state government and create Bonnie's Barbie Dream City with no welfare, and then there wouldn't be homeless people. There just wouldn't be. Because what would they do there? Just sit around actually suffering? No, they sit around on the streets doing drugs and stuff because they have welfare.
Right. I mean, somebody in Morazon or Bootstrap, however you want to call it, they can get away with being lazy as long as you allow them to. Now, certainly people suffer and, people take care of their families and things like that. But, these nation states have to take care of things like poverty, whereas, these little units that we're calling private cities, they let people in who merit being let in.
It's a contractual relationship. It's everyone here is the product of a win-win interaction. The renter said, you know, these houses are very affordable. You provide high safety. There's no crime in Morazan. You can leave your door unlocked. None of the bikes are locked in the city.
Yeah, you have
What
a,
you
a
have-
Hold
wall.
on. This is worth pointing out is that Morazan is right in the center of one of the most dangerous places in Honduras, which was one of, at one point, the most dangerous countries on the planet. I mean, it's not like the founder of this, Massimo, it's not like he picked an easy place. He wanted to show that the ideas of liberty work, and they work for everybody. And this is the most important part that I've been so terrible at communicating up to this point. You don't need libertarians to move to be successful. You just need to set up a libertarian city to start with, and everybody becomes a libertarian.
And would you say that's mostly due to the wall is why it's so safe, or?
Yeah, I think that, well, so the wall's mandated by the government. I don't know what would have happened
didn't know
in
that.
another circumstance, but the wall was mandated by the law. And the purpose of the wall is basically so it's easier to commit crime outside of Morazan, which, how many acres is Morazan, Alex?
So it's 45 hectares, and the law is required because it's a duty-free zone.
Yeah.
So because goods imported directly into Morazan have no tax, the government wants a wall to prevent smuggling. Imagine you can just bring in TVs and iPhones and everything else without paying any import tax, something not possible in America, by the way. Then you can have a much lower cost of living. And the government does not want everyone to have this lower cost of living if it comes at the expense of their cut. They want their cut of all those goods, and thus they say build a wall.
And there is 2.471 acres to a hectare. And what did he say? It was 45 acres, so it was roughly 45 hectares would be roughly a little over 100 acres.
A little 100 acres, yeah. So 100 acres is mandated by, again, the law in Honduras. And, the idea is that you have enough space to provide housing for people. And, Alex, I hear they're building. Now, when you say they're building, are they planning to build again in Morazan? Concurrently, there's 64 units, and those things were filled up last I heard.
Let me step in here, Mark. We don't
What's
have planning departments in Morazan. There's no building permits, zoning departments, none of that. We don't plan to build, we just build. And building we are. So every day there's trucks moving in and out, carrying in dirt. They're bulldozing ground to make it nice and level. And within about 6 months, we should have another 40 units or so. How long is it?
And how many people live in 64 units?
200 people, approximately.
About 200? So call it 350 and 40 units, just round numbers.
Well, almost double our population in the next, I would say in the next year, we should more than double the population because there'll be more construction next year.
I've heard all kinds of bad things going on in Honduras about, the government's going to shut down. The government did shut down Zetis. They voted out the law. They did all kinds of things. What's going on with that?
You must have been reading fake news.
Well, they did get rid of the law, right?
Yes. So the big thing that was done is they repealed the Zeti law. And for those that don't understand the Zetis and the authority, that sounds significant. But there's 3 levels of security for the Zeti. It's perhaps the most secure freedom-related law in the world. There is the law, which is the easiest part to remove. It's just a normal act of Congress. There's the constitutional amendment. So they amended the Constitution to allow for these special zones. And then there are international treaty obligations, which are even higher than the Constitution. So they repealed the law, but in the repealing of the law, it's grandfathered in for 10 years. So it affects nothing of the existing Zetis.
But I
and
thought
then treaty.
I thought there was something that happened, sorry to interrupt, where basically they had to say, okay, we're for sure going to get rid of the law, but they ended their congressional session without doing that, so it was null and void. That's what I thought happened, but it was kind of hard to understand without knowledge of what all is going on there.
And that's why Alex is here, because he is one of the foremost experts on this.
Can people
what
own?
you're referring to is the constitutional protection. So in Honduras, to repeal a constitutional amendment takes 2 sessions of the legislature. So you can't just in 1 year get rid of something in the Constitution. You need 2 separate sessions of Congress and thus 2 separate years. So in 2022, they repealed the law and started the constitutional repeal process. However, this year, on October 31st, happy Halloween, the timeline to repeal the constitutional amendment expired. So it's no longer possible to repeal the constitutional amendment without another 2 sessions. So they'd have to, in the 2024 and 2025 Congress, vote to repeal it. But if they weren't able to repeal it now, it's far less likely they'll be able to appeal it in the future. Pretty much 0 chance. Like most countries, amending the Constitution is extremely difficult, and it's that way on purpose. So
right. And what I think is great about this project is that this is one man's idea. And his idea is that libertarianism exists better when people compartmentalize and they specialize, as we were talking about here previously. And that includes, in this case, there's no home ownership in Morazan. It's all rentals. Can you address that?
Yeah. So there's a model of organization of a community called entrepreneurial community. The name is a little strange at first until you understand it. It's describing a community managed by a single entrepreneur. So this is the single sole landlord of the community. You can think of an example such as a shopping mall. A shopping mall will be owned by one company, and it could have dozens to thousands of tenants depending on the size of the shopping mall. That shopping mall provides public goods from parking lots to securities. They might even have some small medical facilities depending on the size of the mall. So the thought is this model is extremely efficient and gives you a ton of flexibility. And applying that to the residential sector allows for extreme flexibility as well. There's 2 key examples, I think, that make this clear for most people who I know their default instinct is, but if you don't own your house, then you're a slave. Right? That's kind of the American propaganda that the Fed and central banks have brainwashed you in. You must take out debt, get a loan, own a home, pump up the money supply, etc. And so in reality, your house should be a depreciating asset. Your roofs go bad, your windows go bad, everything in your house decays. And it doesn't really make sense for you to hire plumbers and tradesmen one by one to fix things, as opposed to a larger landlord having a plumber on payroll for a fraction of the cost. So there's all kinds of trade-offs for home ownership versus renting at scale. But the biggest 2 to take into account are, 1, flexibility. We did not know what the city of the future would look like 100 years ago. American cities were poorly built. They were built around the automobile. And we now know, as you were talking earlier, right, many young people don't want to drive. They want a walkable city, the 15-minute city. All of these things are very popular. The rent premiums are very high there. If you live in a normal city, to rezone a district, it's extremely difficult. You have to knock everything down. Whereas in this type of city, the landlord owns everything. You can knock everything down and relocate.
Okay, it's kind of cutting over you. The music is. We're going to be right back with more. Don't go anywhere. It's Free Talk Live. More on this when we come back.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident is not being treated as a terror attack. Our Europe correspondent Ross Cullen has been following this developing story.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas.
No breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations as diplomats struggle to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza. Council members have been meeting behind closed doors, but there hasn't been a vote, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
It's been days of negotiations, with many diplomats seemingly frustrated that the vote has not taken place yet. At the heart of the delays are apparent disagreements by the US on the text, with one sticking point being the demand that the UN set up a monitoring mechanism to facilitate the aid in and out of Gaza. The US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Hood, has reportedly said, "We're still working at it, but we aren't there yet." Meanwhile, as this all unfolds, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the intense fighting, lack of electricity and limited fuel has severely restricted the UN's efforts to provide life-saving aid to the people in Gaza.
And in India, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the largest mass suspension ever of parliamentarians there. Neha Punia has the details from New Delhi.
With opposition benches inside Parliament wearing a deserted look, several leaders held a demonstration outside, holding placards that read, "Save Democracy." They say the suspensions are a mark of a dictatorship. Prime Minister Modi and his Home Minister Amit Shah, who oversees the security of Parliament as well as national security, have rejected the opposition's demand for them to address the House over the security breach. They say a probe is underway and they're taking the issue very seriously.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call to bring up whatever is on your mind. That's 603-283-6160. And I would like to tell you about ForkFest 2024. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th, forkfest.party. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Jay,
and Mark,
remotely in Florida.
That's right.
And was there anything else you wanted to say about Morazan City? I kind of out of habit dropped Alex during the break.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why somebody has to be held over the break necessarily. Yeah. But I'm excited about what's going on in Morazan, and I'm it's sort of from an observer standpoint. I'm not trying to advocate that people move to Morazan to be free. What I'm saying is that private cities, what we've been talking about here on Free Talk Live for 20 years, work. Morazan's designed as a place for workers at factories that make textile factories in Honduras to have a safe and dignified place to live for a low amount of money. The rent there that I was paying, I think they're going to raise it a little bit, but I don't know how much. I haven't done the calculations or anything. But the rent that I was paying when I was there was $120 a month. If you included everything, I was putting in about $200 to $250, and that's because I was living lavishly. Families can live for far less there, and safe, totally safe. Which, like I said, this isn't a safe place, but it itself is safe.
Yeah.
Outside of Morazan, it's not safe. Inside of Morazan, it is, and I think that that's just amazing. It's a huge leap forward, and everything we believe appears to be so. And like we said, it was going to be. And finally, somebody's tried it, and Honduras allowed for at least a brief period of time for private cities to be created. And it's great stuff. The current government of Honduras, the Libre Party, I mean, they're terrible. The other Zede, Prospera, they've got a couple of very powerful Libre people that are associated with the town that is right next door called Crawfish Rock. And so they say all kinds of terrible things about the Zede. They've even spread the rumor that the Zede is out murdering people.
Oh my gosh. Just
crazy
Prospera
stuff.
or all of them?
Yeah, this would be Prospera, yeah. Wow. As though they're hunting down the people of Crawfish Rock like some kind of modern day, what's the book that, in the movie that was so popular? Anyway, I can't remember it. The book that's supposed to be the terrible dystopian future where they hunt people.
I don't know that one, honestly.
It was very popular, but
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not your fault.
It's actually more like a battle. It's not really that they're hunting people, so I got a little confused. Maybe even I read it in high school.
It's kind of like a gladiator thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, what has happened is that the people of Crawfish Rock, and a large percentage of them are employed at Prospera, they're saying to their overlords, who are this Libre Party, they're saying, no more of this. We are getting, we're getting paid and we're getting treated well by Prospera, and you won't be treating us like that anymore. And now the Libre Party, like the one person owns like a bunch of the houses there, they're kicking out people that have been vocal against them. They're kicking them out of their homes. So Prospera has to quickly build housing for these people so that they can have a place to live, because their evil socialist overlords are like, if you don't believe what we believe, you're out on the street.
Don't people have right to bear arms in Honduras?
Well, first off, arms are expensive, and Hondurans tend to not be very wealthy. But Yes. Guns are all over the place. I mean, people use them to guard. There's people guarding all kinds of businesses and that kind of thing. As to how easy or hard it is, the best I can tell is it's pretty darned easy to get a gun. But I can't speak to it. I'm not an a firearms expert in Honduran law.
Well, it looks like we have a caller on the line, so I'm going to go to Tim in Florida, even though it's a little weird because Tim told me that he would never call in when I was hosting ever again. But go on, Tim. What's on your mind?
Got a good point.
What is the point, Tim?
Oh, I think he hung up.
Yeah, he hung up.
Yeah, he called me Yoko Ono because Yoko Ono famously kept the Beatles together while John Lennon was in jail or something like that.
That is stinging.
So
Not
stupid.
nice.
I just pointed out a fact and he hung up, so I wasn't the one being mean there. He emailed me saying he would never call in with a female host ever again hosting, and it was because of me. I was like,
well,
I
if
don't
he
even
ever
know what
says
he's talking
Yoko
about.
Ono to you again, you just go,
Oh my God. Mark, that's true statement.
It is racist. But no, she did this some kind of weird singing on some album. It was awful.
Yeah. There's that video of her singing like that. It just sounded kind of funny the way you said it. Well, Jay brought in this story we were discussing a few subjects ago about vegetable oils, and there's a story on Zero Hedge called "I'm Going to Red Pill You About Vegetable Oils." Could you just summarize what it is it basically is going to tell us about vegetable oils?
Let me summarize one thing I was saying first. So, like Crisco is diabetes in a bottle. So, when you consume these vegetable oils, seed oils, oxidated hydrogenated oils is basically what they are by the time you get them. They are not like that oil that's pressed out of a soybean. It's chemically altered, for example. And even soybeans, we shouldn't be consuming them anyways. Like one of the things, I don't feed my pigs any soy, and I
That's
specifically have people like, oh, you don't feed your pigs or chicken soy, right? We don't want soy in them because all the soy is Roundup ready. So it's got a bunch of chemicals in it. It's got a mineral inhibitor called, Agent Orange is what it was originally called, but now that's what Roundup basically is, glyphosate, Agent Orange. But when you consume this, your red blood cells are essentially made, the cell membrane, the cell wall is made from these oil molecules, and instead of a animal-based cholesterol molecule. And then what happens is these red blood cells are basically unable, or the efficiency is dropped tremendously, its ability to transport sugar. So you have, like, when you consume sugar and you've eaten some fried food, your blood sugar, your glucose index or glycemic index spikes a lot because the sugar is not being absorbed by the blood. It's not going to the muscles, so your muscles definitely burn glucose to recover. Well, when you've ate, some Popeye's fried chicken, like Mark is addicted to.
I am a fan. Probably once a month.
Well, that's not bad. If you're doing it every third day, it's you are going to be diabetic.
Fried chicken isn't that good.
Yeah.
So, anyways, your body can't deal with the sugar, so you have a lot of sugar in your blood, but it's not getting absorbed by the red blood cells, so therefore it's not being carried to the places it needs. It's not getting into your toes, it's not getting into your eyes, it's not getting to replenish muscle. So this is where you have diabetics that they're getting toes amputated because the sugar is not getting there.
And you know what's really bad about that? Your brain mostly uses sugar to transmit all of its electric things.
Yep. So your brain now needs sugar. It's not getting it. And then you crave more sugar. So these people, want more sugar because they're on the seed oils. And when you were talking about is you can have some sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And, what kind of sugar is Lori using? Is she using maple syrup? Is she using honey?
I don't know. I drink coffee every day with honey, and I haven't had any kind of issues getting fat or ugly. What happens is if I eat a Snickers bar, I will immediately break out.
Yep.
But I don't break out from just, honey, maple syrup. I don't know. This thing I'm drinking right here is stevia. It hasn't seemed to be very bad for me.
So anyways.
And Jay, I'm just to interrupt. Laura couldn't handle the whole FBI raid thing and stuff like that, so we got a divorce some time ago.
Oh no, he said Lori because I was talking about eating a bunch of Lori's food. But you
all right,
still
Wanted to
still-
clarify.
Oh,
So, anyways, yeah. So Lori's a co-host here on Free Talk Live on Wednesday nights.
Yes,
Yes.
Lori.
So Lori and Stu used to live, over at my place, and Lori is an awesome baker,
Mhm.
and so she would make these cakes that were would use maple syrup and would use just a bunch of fruit blends inside with the cake, and she is the best baker I think
she's
there is.
a really, really good baker. Oh my God. Her husband came by the house and just gave me this box of a whole bunch of cookies and a whole loaf of cinnamon bread she made and some fudge and some teas for Christmas. And that is just the sweetest thing that anyone has ever done.
Oh yeah, she's got the best butterscotch cookies I've ever had. Anyways, but there's a big all sugars are not equal. So getting back to the sugar and the seed oils, the sugar, your body is basically not able to deal with the sugar, not able to deal with it correctly, which leads to a bunch of complications. Now your blood sugar skyrockets. When your blood sugar skyrockets, then your body needs to produce insulin, and then the pancreas, in order to produce enough insulin to keep up with stuff, the adrenal glands got to kick in so the pancreas can produce more and more insulin, and you get your pancreas burns out, you have all these problems, you have all these health issues. So the seed oils are really bad. To sum up this article, so they basically talk about how people who've been using margarine have 700,
And that's what they call trans fats, right?
Yes.
PUFAs, it's polyunsaturated fatty acids, where they have a whole bunch of different areas where an oxygen molecule can get in there instead of just one, like a monosaturated fatty acid, I guess is what you'd call it. And that's bad because it makes your whole body more subject to oxidation.
So what they talk about is these omega-6 fatty acids can cause chronic inflammation. So your seed oils are loaded with this omega-6 fatty acid, and that are linked to autoimmune diseases and an imbalance with omega-3. So the omega-3s are like your fish oil, that are really good and beneficial for you. This high omega-6 fatty acids links diets and vegetable oils to oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction. So mitochondria is like the engine of the cell, and when it doesn't function correctly, your cells don't work properly. Genetic damage and increased risk of cancer and heart disease. So these the extraction processes for vegetable oils like canola, soybean, and corn oil involves unnatural methods such as high heat and chemical solvents, leading to oxidation and trans fat. These oils, a modern dietary phenomenon, have been seen tremendous use since the early 1990s, paralleling the increase in chronic health issues. And I can tell you, these oils are dirt cheap compared to so 100 years ago, all of our great grandmothers, they fried that country fried chicken in pork lard.
Yeah. And it wasn't a pork that ate nothing but soybean its whole life, because now the lard you buy on the grocery store shelf is just basically seed oil. It's basically soy oil because they make their pigs in soy, or feed their pigs soy, so their pigs are made of soy, and their lard is too.
And all of these seeds that they're getting these oils from are heavily government subsidized. So the soybean subsidy is huge. The canola oil subsidy is huge. Canada produces a ton of canola. And soybean and canola oil should be used as a motor fuel and a lubricant. That's really, about it. And when they started getting really good at, so with the petroleum that comes out of the ground, the crude oil, replacing a lot of, because it's a superior lubricant than seed oils. So your cottonseed oil and canola oil, those were basically lubricants back in the day. And then when the petroleum started coming into the market, and you were making gasoline from the refining process, you had all of this byproduct left over that actually makes really good, really stable lubrication oils for engines and stuff and drive lines. And
that's what's gross about it. It's most of these oils came about because they're a byproduct, and the person who's manufacturing whatever it's a byproduct of was like, oh, I want to make more money, so what can we use this for? Oh, let's make margarine out of it. That I just want to tell the listeners what the Hateful Eight are, as they're calling them. The 8 seed oils that you should avoid, because my parents are always texting me like, is this a seed oil? It's really, I guess you should say vegetable oil, because they're not all from seeds, but one of the worst ones is sunflower oil. Then there's soy oil, cottonseed oil, which is even worse than sunflower oil, safflower oil, which is the worst of the worst, corn oil, rice bran oil, grapeseed oil, and then canola oil, aka rapeseed oil. Those are the Hateful Eight.
Grape seeds are oily? I'm surprised you can get anything out of them.
I don't even know what a grapeseed. Yeah, they're so tiny. I don't know. I don't know how you get oil out of that.
If they can make grape seeds nearly invisible in a grape, they can make them very large and, probably squeeze them for oil, I guess.
Well,
that is probably what they do. Make them bigger.
Well, for every bottle of wine, there's going to be, an amount of seeds. For every, grape juice or grape jam or jelly, there's going to be some seeds, and and they're gonna find a way to market that instead of throwing it out, for example. Right. And there's a big difference between a whole seed, like a whole grape seed. How many whole grape seeds would you have to eat to come up with the amount of oil in that grape seed? And let's not forget, these oils are, chemically, essentially, so like in the cannabis industry with making like cannabis waxes and like what they call dab waxes and stuff like that, there is like a chemical solvents that they use to make these things, and they'll usually use like a butane or stuff, and that is generally like the cheaper type of like cannabis or THC wax or oil that you'll find on the market. And then they have like stuff that's just pressed.
Yeah, just pure.
They just put it in a press and it's pressed.
And there's nothing as like really bad for you about that, but it freaks me out to think of all the additives and fragrances that are in these like weed pots of little jars of quote unquote weed that people are smoking these days, and those little pens that are just a gel basically. That freaks me out. Like I don't even know what is in all of that stuff. At least if you have a plant, it's just a plant. Well, it might have Roundup sprayed on it, but still. Well,
the thing that's kind of scary about like cannabis and hemp, if you're like ingesting it and smoking it, is one thing it does really, really well is it augments the soil. It cleans the soil. So if you have soil that has like lead, cadmium, and all kinds of these heavy metals, for example, that hemp or cannabis plant like uptakes that out of the soil, and then it puts it right into the actual. I don't know if it puts it into the seed or if it puts it into like the bud or where exactly, but it gets in it. There was actually an article I wanted to look at a while ago. I don't know where it is, but it basically talked about the high levels of lead and cadmium that is in these THC products. Because, for example, like in Massachusetts, they're growing a lot of this pot, basically industrial, in like a lot of these warehouses. Manufacturing buildings that are like 200 years old. They're all over the place. These mill buildings that are just covered in like lead and cadmium, and it's just everywhere. Gross. And it's like, and then a lot of the, dirt that they're using in the soil is, it's not really being tested. Like, and there's definitely, some high levels of lead and cadmium in people's like blood and stuff from this basically dirty weed.
Apparently chocolate has the same thing, and lead and cadmium are I don't know if you'd call it a forever chemical, but it's something that is not supposed to be processed through your body. Like it'll get stuck in your brain and probably your fat cells, because I know fat cells are a place where when your body's like, I don't know what to do with this, it puts it in a fat cell, which is a good reason to not have a lot of those just sitting around. And the same thing is apparently true about chocolate, is what you're saying with the factories around.
Well, not
marijuana?
so much the factory. Oh, well, yeah. So with a lot of the marijuana grows in Massachusetts, they're in a lot of these old mill buildings that are on the rivers that have hydropower plants within them. Mm-hmm. And because the guy, so I know a guy who owns one of these outfits, that he owns one of these buildings, and he rents like almost all of his space now to some growing operations, because he can sell them the electricity for like triple the price he can sell the electricity into the grid because he's got hydropower. And
he should just mine crypto instead of...
I tried getting him to do
Really?
that. Yeah, he did not want to mess with crypto because the amount of money he's getting from the weed growers is pretty crazy on the electricity side, because so when he sells it into the grid, he gets like 4 cents a kilowatt. When he sells it to the weed grower, he gets like 12 cents a kilowatt or something. And if the weed grower had to buy it from the grid, it would basically cost about 30 cents a kilowatt. Like right now in New Hampshire, it's like 29 cents a kilowatt for electricity. Like 6 months ago, it was 33 cents a kilowatt. It went down just a little bit. But so it's kind of a lucrative thing with almost all these mill towns now. You got all these, huge grow operations. And so anyways, and even for like a lot of people are like, if you're, like the house, that I lost in Bondsville, Massachusetts due to the property tax thing was an old mill house. And like I tested some of the soil around there, and it had like a lot of garbage in it. Like it was like, you should be, growing your tomatoes in a bucket, not in that dirt,
Wow.
Because it was like, so I never really did any gardening there, but I had a farm that wasn't far away that I went to all the time, my dad's farm. So we had gardens there, and that soil was
Mm-hmm.
pretty clean, but it was on the top of a mountain, and it was it wasn't like
a mill house there.
Industrial textile mill for the past 400 years. So there's a big difference between like the soil in New England all around where these mills are along all these rivers versus like the soil in like Denver or even California, for example.
Well, yeah, I'm just creeped out by all the things that they add to marijuana before you smoke it, and then putting any kind of smoke into your lungs is also bad for you. So that's something I'm not doing anymore. But I think it'd be worse. You'd be worse off eating seed oils all the time, because this article tells us, it basically explains exactly what Jay was telling us about the extraction process and what the inflammation is doing inside your body and the oxidative stress. But it also says the Minnesota coronary experiment found that participants who increased their intake of corn oil and margarine had an 86% higher incidence of heart attacks despite lower cholesterol levels. So the thing is, like, back in I want to say the 60s or the 50s, they started making cholesterol seem like the devil, like cholesterol is the really bad thing that we should avoid.
Yeah, it was Harvard in the 70s, and it's all been debunked. Even like I recently know I have a friend, he's this older fella, and he had like a heart attack and some things, and they're like, no, you have to eat margarine. And I'm like, are you crazy? They're still saying to do margarine?
That sucks so bad.
The pharma is so screwed up. They want you to be a customer for life. They don't want you to heal.
And then you're a customer of their terrible foods in the United States, and then you're a customer of their pills to heal you after the foods poisoned you. And it also says the margarine study, which is a great name, revealed that the group consuming margarine high in linoleic acid from vegetable oils had a 700% higher rate of strokes, heart attacks, and cardiovascular deaths compared to a group consuming omega-3 rich fish oil. It's Free Talk Live, and more is coming up. Don't go anywhere. 603-283-6160 is the phone number, and it's Free Talk Live.
Are you wasting money by following instructions? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. It could be the most diabolical marketing tactic ever. On your bottle of shampoo, it says rinse and repeat. Translation, use this up twice as fast as you need to. Hey, old habits die hard. On our blog, Joey writes, Starbucks? They should call it $5. He says he spends a lot of time in the car, and instead of habitually doing the drive-thru, he now totes a tall insulated travel mug, and he says he's saving $100 a month by bringing coffee from home. And Heidi posts a tip for Costco shoppers. When you see an asterisk on the price sign, it indicates an item that may be discontinued soon, so load up. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks on the blog at andyoucanquoteme.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident is not being treated as a terror attack. Our Europe correspondent Ross Cullen has been following this developing story.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas.
No breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations as diplomats struggle to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza. Council members have been meeting behind closed doors, but there hasn't been a vote, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
It's been days of negotiations, with many diplomats seemingly frustrated that the vote has not taken place yet. At the heart of the delays are apparent disagreements by the US on the text, with one sticking point being the demand that the UN set up a monitoring mechanism to facilitate the aid in and out of Gaza. The US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Hood, has reportedly said, "We're still working at it, but we aren't there yet." Meanwhile, as this all unfolds, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the intense fighting, lack of electricity and limited fuel has severely restricted the UN's efforts to provide life-saving aid to the people in Gaza.
And in India, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the largest mass suspension ever of parliamentarians there. Neha Punia has the details from New Delhi.
With opposition benches inside Parliament wearing a deserted look, several leaders held a demonstration outside, holding placards that read, "Save Democracy." They say the suspensions are a mark of a dictatorship. Prime Minister Modi and his Home Minister Amit Shah, who oversees the security of Parliament as well as national security, have rejected the opposition's demand for them to address the House over the security breach. They say a probe is underway and they're taking the issue very seriously.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the process behind the delayed efforts to vote on a draft resolution about Gaza at the United Nations Security Council. Conversations have been going on for days now, with multiple layers of negotiations about the language contained in the draft resolution. So how does the whole system work? Sir Kim Darroch is a former UK ambassador to the United Nations.
They're put together by someone putting a draft forward, and there are 15 members of the Security Council, and that draft gets discussed both collectively and individually with those 15 members. If people ask for amendments, the drafters, which is sometimes just one country, will then have to decide whether they're going to change to bring that country on board, the risk always being if you get one on board by changing the draft, you lose someone else. And that will usually go on for 3 or 4 days. And then it culminates in a public session. The various ambassadors, the representatives of the Security Council states sit around, they vote, and then they explain their vote. And it's the explanation of vote that sets out why countries have taken the position they've taken.
Of course, the devil is always in the wording of the draft resolutions, and no more so than when it comes to the thorny issue of the Middle East, which is why the UN has taken so long to get to an agreed text.
Our top stories again. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident in the Czech capital is not being treated as a terror attack. And no breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations. Diplomats struggling to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Higher in Washington.
Tensions in Washington, D.C. reached a new high yesterday as several dozen members of Congress took a class of visiting school children hostage, barricaded themselves inside the Capitol Rotunda, and demanded $12 trillion in cash. The children were rounded up at gunpoint, whereupon the House Speaker informed negotiators that one child would die every hour unless their demands were met. Here now, a brief video one of the students was able to send out from inside the Capitol.
Nobody move, you're all gonna die! This kid's got a phone.
Historians across the country politely reminded Americans this week to quickly check and see what has happened in the past before making any big decisions.
Just take any book with history in it and then quickly skim through it to see what decisions in the past turned out to be bad. And then once you've pinpointed them, simply don't make those same decisions again. Because if a bad thing happened again, you see, that would be very bad indeed, wouldn't it?
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number that you can call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark.
And I want to tell you about the Amplifier program. And I'd like to thank Save a Horse, who's a silver level amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. Amplifier means that he helps advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. And you can learn more about that at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. So thank you, Save a Horse. He went to that link and now he's getting the benefits that come with being an amplifier and also helping us spread the word of the show.
Save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Yeah,
where that comes from.
Pretty funny name. I don't think I'd seen that one yet.
It was a song that was pretty popular about 20 years ago.
Yeah, but I just hadn't seen that guy's name yet. What's it? Something George? I don't know. Some
Strait?
George Strait? Is that him?
No.
I think that you're right.
That was Big and Rich.
Oh, really?
Was
okay.
the name of that band.
I was wrong. But in the last segment, we were talking about this article from Zero Hedge, and to just finish it up, it's going to red pill you about vegetable oils. Just to finish it up, I want to tell you, it says Americans should be aware that mega corporations controlling the nation's food supply have been force-feeding folks with junk food. I feel like that's a bit extreme, except for when you have an actual thing on your arm that's made of high fructose corn syrup and canola oil when you go to the hospital. That's not even a joke. They'll put that straight into your veins. It says, one of the main contributors to the obesity crisis. This also impacts public health and is considered a national security threat. particularly regarding military readiness. Oh, like everyone being fat and out of shape, I guess. Folks need to ditch crime-ridden urban areas for rural communities and become their own food producer to break away from the government and mega corporations that control the food supply, it says. And I think also just choosing to not eat this product in favor of this product is doing actually a lot of good, because you're telling the manufacturers of this junk food, I'm not going to eat that, I'm going to eat this, and you're going to make less money, and they'll get that signal eventually.
Well, here's the thing. They are kind of force feeding it, and the way that the government forces things is through what's called subsidies. So if you look at, I have a good friend that works in a market basket in Massachusetts, and she is constantly like telling me stories about the welfare moms that are coming in there, and they are putting, all of this garbage food, 12 packs of soda, multiple 12 packs of soda. And, you got like zebra cakes and Nutty Buddies and, potato chips and just junk food after junk food after because junk food is super cheap. Like you can fill a carriage full of Little Debbie snacks at the grocery store for probably, I don't even know, but it's like way cheaper. You for what 10 pounds of beef cost or steak cost, you can fill a whole carriage with Little Debbie snacks, in the big 20-pack boxes or whatever. And this is what a lot of the the welfare moms, the EBT card sliders, are buying week after week after week. And it's not just a couple of them; it is like all of them.
Yeah, I see women walking around with their kids and with the Little Debbies and sodas every time I go to the grocery store. I'm watching and judging people.
And what that's doing, and so another thing is when kids are born, when you're born, you pretty much have all the IQ you're going to get. And Jordan Peterson talks about this. So it is really, really hard to increase IQ, but it is actually relatively easy to decrease IQ through malnutrition, through poor nutrition. So one of the things that I've been doing with my kids, like since they've been eating, is even this morning I gave them each both basically a quarter inch of the Kerrygold butter.
Nice.
Grass-fed butter is butter from grass-fed cows is really important because it's got a lot more of that omega-3 fatty acid to it. And so I'll slice that off, and my kids they'll just eat some butter. They eat butter often every single day their entire lives. Also, we raise cows, we raise pigs, we raise chickens, so like I know what all my animals are getting. I've actually have been able to with Bardo Farm, we work together on sourcing really high quality animal feed, which is basically it's expired feed from breweries that breweries can't use because it's expired. It's actually kind of a joke, but so we get this feed that is non-GMO. There's no chemicals sprayed on it. So we're feeding our pigs like malted barley. We're feeding our pigs malted rye, malted wheat that comes out of like a lot of Scotland and England. And there's no Roundup or anything put on it. There's a lot of it's really good stuff. But anyways, nutrition is so important. And when you're feeding your kids garbage like candy, like the hydrogenated oils, like all these Little Debbie snacks, Chef Boyardee, and 99-cent a pound hot dogs, for example, which is 99-cent a pound hot dogs. Mark's over there shaking his head. Yeah, he knows what it costs to produce beef and meat. That 99-cent a pound hot dog is garbage, and just like American cheese,
subsidized garbage.
Yeah, subsidized garbage. So it's dirt cheap. So they're forcing it through subsidies. Whatever you subsidize, there's going to be a lot more of. So most of these welfare moms are, they're probably, they're more concerned. They really need to be frugal with their money because, like, they got $200 hairdos, they got a $150 set of nails on them. I'm sure you picked this up, right, Bonnie? With these welfare recipients that are swiping their EBT card, they got really nice nails, and they got the really good hairdos. I mean, these are the things that my wife points out. She's like, look at the eyelashes on her. Those cost this. Look at the hair, that costs that much, and look at the fingernails.
I don't think I really noticed that type of thing, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, just go to
Because that's-
a grocery store on the 5th of the month in New Hampshire, and that's when the EBT cards are recharged. And don't go early in the morning because those people don't wake up early. But you go about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just walk around with maybe a chest camera or something, or like. And
It's funny
I've done
how
it a few times.
people who are on like welfare, the things that they think make them look not poor are things that just make them look trashier, like fake eyelashes. I've always hated those.
And when it comes to like butter, so like another thing too is they'll be buying Country Crock vegetable spread.
Yeah, it's just canola oil.
Like the butter that
Soybean oil, maybe.
I like to buy is a grass-fed butter, so we usually buy Kerrygold. And Kerrygold, a half a pound is like $4.29 for a half a pound of Kerrygold. Well, actually, I think it's really cheap because I've milked cows before.
But you're also getting real nutrients. So in terms
Right.
of the amount of nutrients you're getting, that's how I like to think
you
about
can
it.
buy a 3-pound tub of Country Crock for like $2.99. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they're feeding their kids. And this is why the IQ of the kids that are being fed by the welfare moms that need to have their hair done and their nails done, that are buying the cheapest possible calories that they can give their kids, these kids' IQ are being diminished. And this is why the culture of the urban city liberal types is really, really gone downhill because they've diminished the IQ of their children, for a few generations, especially since the 90s now.
And I think that's what, to some extent, I don't know if that's the plan, right? But that's what the result of just the United States government is pumping these subsidies into things that are kind of empty calories. So, you compare how many calories and how much nutrition is in a pound of flour versus a pound of broccoli. And, there's big machines for taking for harvesting the grains,
the wheat,
but
yep.
You've got to harvest broccoli by hand. You just got to cut it off and do the whole thing. And they haven't put the time, the energy, or anything like that into these these vegetables that provide real nutrition.
As a farmer, I am, that is not a government subsidized farmer. And that's the thing. I didn't want to be a farmer until I was holding Cypress in my arms in the hospital. Right. Because I farmed. I worked on these government subsidized farm operations. And that's the only way you're going to get anywhere in farming is to be government subsidized. Well, hopefully, I'm really praying hard that this U.S. dollar system collapses so there can be no more farm subsidies. And the reason is we have enjoyed such cheap food here in America because of the farm subsidy. A friend of mine did a whole bunch of research on the beef subsidy. Basically, the beef subsidy in like 2019, depending on which metric you want to use, ranged anywhere from the U.S. government subsidized beef from either $29 to $46 a pound is the numbers that he could come up with if you took the lowest numbers and the highest numbers that he could find. Let's say the lowest number is the accurate one. $29 a pound is a subsidy on beef, but that's why in Walmart you can buy a tube of ground beef, a 10-pound tube for $19.95 or $21.95. My local grocery store right in a little town. Pork chops, boneless pork chops that are white, so they're from anemic pigs, because they didn't get iron because they were raised on a concrete floor inside of a barn with 4,000 other pigs.
That's so sad.
Right? So, $1.98 a pound for boneless pork chops. When I send my pigs to the slaughterhouse, it costs me $2.25 a pound just to get the pigs processed.
Just to process them. It's the truth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And these big producers are the ones that are getting all the deals. Now, I just got here at a local grocery store in Florida, $6.99 a pound for a standing rib roast. That's a ribeye steak at $6.99 a pound. You just can't buy that, and that's got to be subsidies. There's no other way to
Do you
describe
think
it.
it's the fake 3D printed meat at some point?
No, it's just
I cut it.
No, it's just subsidies because you can't even feed a cow for that. By the time as like a small time guy like myself. But what happens is these farmers. So $29 a pound went into beef subsidy. The taxpayer for every pound of beef that was sold in Walmart, there was 29 that cost the taxpayer $29 at minimum, according to my friend's study on this. But like a gallon of milk should be $25 when diesel fuel is $6. When you can't hire anybody, to show up to work for much less than $30 or $40 an hour, for example. Like, the New Hampshire minimum wage is $25 an hour. You can't hire anyone to do anything for $25 an hour. And if you want it done right, it's going to cost you $100 an hour to get it done.
It's crazy because in McDonald's, last time I saw, the minimum wage there, or the starting wage there, was $18 an hour. I don't think that would have went back down, even though that was like 2021 when they had up on the sign because they needed people to work so bad.
Hillsborough, New Hampshire, right across the street, there's a tire warehouse. So I go there and get my tires done. And I'm talking to the kid who's doing the tires, and I was kind of coaching him through it. I've been doing this mechanical stuff my entire life, and he's kind of new on the job, and he was like, I need to ask my boss a question. I'm like, what do you got to ask him? And, something about the torque specs or whatever. He's like, I was working at McDonald's before I started working here. He was getting paid $22 an hour to work at McDonald's, Hillsborough, New Hampshire. They offered him $25 an hour not to leave, is what they offered him at McDonald's.
Oh my goodness.
The kid doesn't do drugs. He's a nice kid. He's fairly respectable, best I can tell. And he was like, no, I want to do man work. He took a pay cut. They started him at the tire place at $20 an hour. He took a $2 an hour pay cut because he wanted to just do something different. He'd been working at this McDonald's also since he was like 17. Like he was like, and he said he was like the longest employee they had, at the time. So he was worth the $25 an hour for him not to leave. They got to retrain somebody else that they got to pay, $19 an hour. There's
institutional memory.
Right. This guy knows his job. So he took because he just wanted to man himself up is really the bottom line. So anyways, but I couldn't believe that they offered him $25 an hour. And after thinking about it, and that place, every time I drive by that place, now literally it is the only McDonald's probably for 30 miles if you draw a circle around it, on the map, Hillsborough, New Hampshire, it's like 30 miles from Concord. But it's like there is always a line. It's got one of those double drive-through things so you can like double order, but that 8 o'clock in the morning, that place is slammed. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that place is slammed. 11 o'clock, that place is slammed. All the time. I can't believe
it's basically the only fast food place on the closest thing to an interstate running east and west in New Hampshire. I'm not making excuses, but sometimes when you're super hungry, fast food does, and you're driving along and you've got an appointment to make, fast food has its allure.
If you need to pee somewhere, I only know about that McDonald's specifically because whenever I was doing a job knocking on doors at houses, like I was always far away from the hotel I was actually living at, so I peed at so many, like mostly Subways, because that's like the only fast food restaurant I've noticed New Hampshire has in every single little tiny town. But there was that McDonald's there, so yeah, there's just nothing else around there.
And people are addicted to it because their parents feed it to them when they're little kids.
But we do actually have a caller on the line. We have David in New Mexico on. David, what's in your mind?
Calling a man about a horse.
I think I said in your mind. What's in your mind, David? What's going on in there?
Horses are in my mind.
So you actually have
Jason. Yeah, I want to talk to Jay again, but first of all, I want to say, Trinkle, you're talking about seed oils and junk food. I bought a bag of potato chips. And I'm eating the first potato chips I've eaten in the last 6 years. How do you like that?
There's some pretty good options you can buy for potato chips. So they got potato chips now, like pork rinds are like the chips I let my kids eat because they're cooked in pork lard. So we get my wife buys these like organic pork rinds that are pretty good. And also, you can get some potato chips now that are cooked in coconut oil or avocado oil. But you got to look at the ingredients on the back because a lot of them will say with avocado oil. So it'll be like potato chips, and then it'll be like canola oil, salt, something else, and then avocado oil. You got to make sure it doesn't have that nasty seed oil, ingredient in it.
Speaking of nasty seed oil. Speaking of pork lard. I buy at the beginning of the winter. I buy a 5-gallon bucket of lard that I consume over the course of the winter. I've gone through about 10 pounds of it in the last month.
What do you do with it?
you put it in everything. When you were a kid and grandma made beef stew and or chicken, or better example, chicken stew, chicken soup, and there's all those globules of fat floating around. In that case, it's chicken fat. But in everything else that doesn't have a chicken in it, there's not a bunch of nice fat in there. So when you want that in your soup or your stew or whatever, you just take a big spoon of it and dump it, or like a big ice cream scoop, and dump it in the pot of stew or soup that's brewing, and then you got that nice fat floating on top, and it gives you the calories you need and gives you that mouth feel of the fat, and yum.
I can tell you pork lard has become very, very popular. So like 3 years ago, Bardo Farm, when we were sending the pigs to the slaughterhouse, we weren't taking the pork lard because nobody was really interested in it. Now what's happening is we are now taking all of the pork lard and totally selling out of all the pork lard because just like you, David, people want to use a pork lard like Grandma did.
Right, yeah. Also, another good trick for if people want to help their animals out, your cats and your dogs, if you instead of just feeding them store-bought dog food, if you make your own concoction of rice and eggs and pork lard and mix it in with their dog food, cat food, you can look at online for recipes for that kind of food. You can make your animals a lot happier and healthier too. But what I want to talk to Jay about horses. Oh, and let me just plug something. Last night, Bonnie, you somebody brought in an article, I think Nikki, about a father who had gotten screwed out of his biological daughter.
Yeah, it was crazy. The mom lied that she died during childbirth, and he was like, "No, I'm coming to the hospital to make sure you're not lying or whatever." Yeah, that she didn't put his name on the birth certificate. She gave the kid up for adoption, and the adoption agency that's like this for-profit agency is just like, sorry, listen, dude, it's going to a good home. That's so messed up and crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, it's like it's a hamster. And I just wanted to say, and I'll discuss it point by point another time, maybe when you have the same crew as you did yesterday. Mm-hmm. But of all of the different facts you listed out as to what was illegally done to this guy, wrongfully done to this guy, about half of those things were done to me, and they're done to it's not just him and me, like you said in your story last night. That's over and over and over and over again. The recurring themes are doing the same little tricks over and over again to all kinds of people, the majority of the people that go through the system in those kind of situations.
So that behavior is subsidized also with Child Protective Services, for example. They are subsidized in the family court and all of these adoption agencies. They are subsidized under what's called Social Security Administration Title IV. If you look at this Title IV situation, right, there is massive amount of subsidies. So this is why they really, really want to steal babies and they want to adopt them to somebody else, because it basically, the social workers, that's how they're guaranteed they're going to have a pension, and that's what's sold to them, that they have to do all this evil, horrible stuff so they have a pension and so everything stays afloat. It's another reason why we need to exit. New Hampshire needs to exit United States, so that Title IV money is not coming into New Hampshire and corrupting it at the state and local level.
Well, right. I'd like to chime in here as the most likely only adopted person on the air right now. I'm not advocating for anything that, child welfare does or anything like that. But I can say as, having been young, it would have been terrible for me to be ripped away from my parents after like 2 years old and given to, one of my biological parents. And that's happened on a few rare occasions, and it's not great for the kid. I'm not saying that this situation was good, right, or just. I'm just saying that we have to keep in mind what it's going to be like for the kid too.
Well, what's crazy about this story from last night, I'm not sure about like all the other ones, but this one from last night was this guy wanted to be there at the birth. He was willing and had a room and filled with all the stuff to take care of the kid that day, and she was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the hospital, and she tried to trick him. So he would have been taking care of the kid since day one, and the adoption agency knew this, and they were like, oh, too late, and sorry, she didn't put your name on the birth certificate.
Right.
So
they told her how to cheat.
Yep, it was really gross.
Yeah, exactly, and that's another thing that my ex, in retrospect, you can find out all the ways the lawyers that they paid for instructed her how to cheat on this, how to cheat on that. I mean, they helped her with it. They did it. They took tens of thousands of dollars in exchange.
1 second, David. We'll come back and finish this story. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Don't go anywhere.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. At least 14 people have been killed and dozens more injured by a gunman at a university in Prague. The suspect, a student, was found dead. The incident is not being treated as a terror attack. Our Europe correspondent Ross Cullen has been following this developing story.
Well, armed police were deployed to the area in and around the famous Charles University in downtown Prague. It's one of the oldest universities in the world, and just a short walk from the landmark Charles Bridge in the centre of the Czech capital. There were videos purportedly showing the gunman dressed in all black and aiming a weapon over the side of a balcony, police confirming that he had been eliminated, in their words, but not before those confirmed fatalities. Other videos showing students sheltering high up on the side of a building on a narrow ledge just underneath a balcony. Other footage showing hundreds of people fleeing the university and thousands running away in the centre of the Czech capital. This is a very busy time of year for Prague, which has lots of festive markets which are very popular, and that shooting coming just 4 days before Christmas.
No breakthrough for much of Thursday at the United Nations as diplomats struggle to agree on a resolution on the war in Gaza. Council members have been meeting behind closed doors, but there hasn't been a vote, with the United States voicing serious concerns that the urgent humanitarian pauses proposed could actually slow down aid into the Palestinian territory. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
It's been days of negotiations, with many diplomats seemingly frustrated that the vote has not taken place yet. At the heart of the delays are apparent disagreements by the US on the text, with one sticking point being the demand that the UN set up a monitoring mechanism to facilitate the aid in and out of Gaza. The US Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, has reportedly said, "We're still working at it, but we aren't there yet." Meanwhile, as this all unfolds, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that the intense fighting, lack of electricity and limited fuel has severely restricted the UN's efforts to provide life-saving aid to the people in Gaza.
And in India, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the largest mass suspension ever of parliamentarians there. Neha Punia has the details from New Delhi.
With opposition benches inside Parliament wearing a deserted look, several leaders held a demonstration outside, holding placards that read, "Save Democracy." They say the suspensions are a mark of a dictatorship. Prime Minister Modi and his Home Minister Amit Shah, who oversees the security of Parliament as well as national security, have rejected the opposition's demand for them to address the House over the security breach. They say a probe is underway and they're taking the issue very seriously.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSA.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number that you can call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark.
And we also are just going to go right into the phones because we have David on the line. David, are you still there?
Yep.
And you were calling in to talk about a story we talked about yesterday about a man who got his kids taken away from him the day they're supposed to be born. Or maybe one kid, but...
Right. And what I was saying is I just wanted to bring that up because you mentioned yesterday. And on another Wednesday, when you have that same crew, I would like, if you can... if she's not listening now, if you could tell Nikki if she'd have that article handy again, I'd like her to bring up some of the major points of that article, and then I'd like to add on to what I hear her bringing up from that article and confirm how they're doing it, not just in that one case, but they're doing it over and over and over again, that same pattern.
So they have like a system of taking people's kids away and selling them to make money?
Yeah, there's recurring themes. They're doing the same thing over and over again to each different individual. And there are tens and literally hundreds of thousands of cases just like that guy last night in the United States alone. And then the same thing happens in every first world country around the world. And why first world? Because that's where the money's at, baby.
Wow.
So that's why it happens in first world countries and not in third world countries near as much, because there's money here, and they got a system to basically they're trafficking children, like you said. The child goes one way and the money goes the other way. That's how it works.
So this guy from Arizona, his name is David Jose. He is doing exceptional work with essentially correcting the wrongs of DCYF and like teaching people, how to deal with these guys.
Which is CPS, Child Protective Service, but in New Hampshire, DCYF.
Through notice and affidavit process. And they are, so like he uses Arizona as a lot of example, but if you're having some current Child Protective Services issues, David Jose is on Rumble. I think he's Dave's Cares for You is his thing. But if you just internet search David Jose Rumble, you'll show up. He is a I guess he's a black guy. And he's pretty amazing dude. And he's doing a lot of great work. And he has a lot of resources out there that can help people out tremendously. Because the bottom line is, DCYF, Child Protective Services, Family Court, they are not courts. They are not courts of record. They have no constitutional authority to operate. And what they've been doing is so we actually, through this affidavit and notice process, are having a committee to investigate DCYF here in New Hampshire, a legislative committee to investigate DCYF specifically with my case with DCYF. And
now, your case has to do with your kid being in the car. It wasn't, hot weather or anything like that. And your wife went into the store, left them in there. And I think the car was running. Is that right?
Car was running, climate control on. It was March 18th, 2022. There was still snow on the ground. TJ Maxx, Concord, New Hampshire, which is like a very small, strip mall that was basically built in a farm field. And not even a real busy place. And we have social workers that lied. The social worker said that in her affidavit that she contacted the Henniker police, and the Henniker police said that they were familiar with the Noons as they are free stater, anti-government, live on a compound with lookouts, and are extremely dangerous. And the police never said that.
You got chickens and geese running around there as lookouts?
Yeah. Well, anyways, ask me this horse question. What about horses?
Okay, well, there's a couple different questions, but one main area was breeding programs. But first of all, to finish up on things you said about horses earlier, I'm curious. You said there's big money in training ponies for rich people. They want to buy their kid a well-trained pony. Who is? I don't like riding ponies because they're short and it's a choppy ride for an adult, and you're kind of big for them, especially you. I'm not so bad, but still, are these adults training ponies, or are they young people training these ponies?
It's young people, it's kids and adults. So basically, to really make a pony, you need to be a horseman that has little kids. And so when my little brothers and Christopher, my youngest brother, was small, we were making some ponies. Can't do that anymore because but basically, you got to have little kids to do it, and you got to have a good handler on the ground, and you got to kind of use some tactics and some persuasion and some there's all kinds of methods that these horse trainers use, but
a handler, what do you say, a handler on the ground or underground? What did you say?
On the ground. So like when you're breaking a small to medium pony, and you got like a 5, 6, 7-year-old petite kid on it, the kid can just get bucked right off real easy, and then the kid don't want to ride the pony anymore. So basically, you need to have someone kind of a handler, which would be the adult, on the ground with the pony. And I've literally just gave you enough information to get everybody really hurt.
yeah, exactly.
The horse business is hard, man.
Is that what you're planning on doing, David? You're planning on buying horses to sell them or something?
No, I'm planning on buying horses because I had horses when I was a kid, and then you got to get serious in life, and the horses go bye because they're a luxury. Unless you're actually making money with them or working with them, so they go bye, and then all your life you miss your horse, and finally I'm getting around to I'd like to get a horse or 2 or 3 or 6 again, and it's not to make money, it's because I want to do some horse stuff, but horses cost money. Cars are nice. You can write a check for $10,000 and put $20 of gas in it. And a couple $100 for insurance, and you can just let it sit. You don't got to tend to it every day. You don't got to feed it. It doesn't cost you money. But a horse, you can be in the house watching TV, and the horse is out there costing you money. And so, as a way to slightly offset that, I do a little breeding, a little training, sell a horse here and there, and offset your expenses a little bit.
Yeah, and there are people that do it. And probably what I would do is, if I was you, I'd try to find a local horse trader to kind of buddy up with and start working with a little bit to learn, to at least get yourself up to date on things, and you're going to learn a lot of things that are going to be handy. I don't know if there's a local horse auction around there, but that's where you're going to.
Let me ask you that, Jay. What are the chances that one of these horse traders is like, well, I wish I had somebody to take care of a couple of horses?
They're always looking for that guy or girl. They're looking for. They're always looking for a hand.
One. Yeah. Well, thank you for the call, David. I wanted to get into one of the subjects that Mark brought in tonight, and I brought up this article. Apparently, this is a really big deal, but I hadn't heard about it. This is already a 4-day-old article, and it's also from Zero Hedge. It says Japan's Nippon Steel to buy Nippon.
Yep. It's basically the word Japan before, we went and anglicized it.
Interesting. I had no idea. It says Japan's Nippon Steel to buy U.S. Steel for $14 billion. And what is U.S. Steel? Like, that is a business? Like, that's the name of a company?
It's a steel
mill. I think it was Carnegie's business, and this was at one point the largest business in the world.
Oh, wow.
And, now the idea that the United States is losing the biggest, what was at one point the biggest company in the world to, a foreign competitor, that's really something.
Well, it says Nippon Steel Corp., Japan's largest steel production company, announced Monday morning that it will acquire Pittsburgh-based U.S. Steel in an all-cash deal. Whoa. Valued at $55 per share, which equates to more than 2 trillion yen, or about $14 billion. At $55 in cash, the deal is a 40% premium to the closing price of U.S. Steel shares on Friday. Shares of X, which used to be called Twitter, are up 27% in pre-market trading in New York, around $50 a share. Nippon believes the acquisition of U.S. Steel will enhance its world-leading manufacturing and technology capabilities and enable it to expand the geographic areas. The U.S. is currently the world's 4th top producer of crude steel after China, India, and Japan. And I guess now they're going to be lower than that if we get rid of it. Like, I don't understand how this works.
I don't know that they'll get rid of it, but I can tell you. So one thing with Japan is not experiencing inflation like United States is. Also, the United States, printed up, 40% of all the money that it ever existed in the past couple of years. Japan has not done that, and I can tell you the Japanese have a lot of U.S. dollars they need to get rid of. And so it is probably, to buy your competitor. And that U.S. steel manufacturing plant will actually probably produce a better product once the Japanese own it.
So,
I think
Americans will still be involved and probably working there and stuff, but their boss
For
is
now.
out in Japan.
Once they buy it, they can do whatever they want. And they may find at some point that it's cheaper to manufacture someplace else. This is everything that happened in the 90s and the aughts in the United States is all these businesses just what the giant sucking sound, as Ross Perot referred to it, is, business just being sucked out of the United States and sent to places where labor's less expensive. Now, you want high quality steel, and American union workers have been producing some really great high quality steel for a long time. But at the same time, if it ain't your company, it ain't your business. And if for whatever reason Nippon Steel decides to move it or move part of it or whatever they want to do, then they will.
Well, seeing how this, we have the the complete destruction of the U.S. empire coming soon. In several years, it is going to be very, very cheap. Labor is going to be super cheap in this country, I believe, because, we're already in a depression. But of course, nobody believes that we're in a depression. Now, I've been saying for years we're in a couple years now we're in a recession. But nobody can see this until they're looking in their rearview mirror and they've already driven past it. So the Japanese, need to acquire some steel. The Japanese, like everything Japan manufactures is awesome. I mean, if you take, for example, let's compare some apples to apples. So you have Dodge Dakota, Chevy like S10, now they call them the Colorado and the Canyon, and Ford Ranger trucks. And you compare those to a Toyota Tacoma, a Mazda B2000, and I don't care what era it is, from the 80s, from the 90s to right now, a Toyota Tacoma will destroy any American branded, class of that, not the full-size pickup truck. Japan doesn't produce a ton of full-size pickup trucks, but everything they do is better. A Honda Civic versus a Chevy Cavalier, whether it's 1980 or 2024, I don't even know if Chevy makes Cavalier anymore. I guess they call it I don't know what they call
something
it.
else.
But a Cruise. But if you go look at junkyards, for example, minivans. Here's a really good one. Minivans. Chrysler minivans. There's and General Motors minivans and Ford minivans. There's a whole bunch of them in the junkyards that aren't wrecked. They all got blown motors. But all your Toyota, your Honda, and your Japanese minivans and your Mazdas, for example, cars and anything, there are junkyards full of them. And all of them are wrecked. When I was looking for body parts for my wife's Toyota Matrix a couple years ago, I had a hard time finding body parts. But you could buy a motor and a transmission for a Toyota anything for like $400 from a junkyard because they have piles of wrecked cars with good motors and transmissions. But you look for like an equivalent like General Motors or Ford or Chrysler car, the motors, if the car was wrecked and it had a good running motor, those motors were worth like $1,500 to $2,000 because everybody needed those motors because there was so many of those cars with blown motors and the bodies were fine. The Japanese just do such a great job with everything that they do.
There's a lot of Japanese cars running around with 300,000 miles on them. I think the American cars have been catching up in the last 15 years.
They had to.
But they had to, but they didn't have to. They could have just died. And I'm proud to say that much, but if somebody asks me whether I'd rather have a Japanese car from the 90s or an American car from the 90s, I know what my answer is.
And like your Toyotas, for example, this was funny. So like I know a guy, he was going to buy his son a car. He spoils his son. This guy's got a lot of money. He's going to buy his son like a car for his first car. It's going to be you can spend $30,000. And the kid wanted a Toyota something or another car. And his father says, no, you have to buy an American-made car. You can buy a Chrysler, you can buy a Chevrolet or GM, or you can buy a Ford. And he says, I prefer you buy a GM. All the GMs were made in Mexico. The Toyota the kid wanted, I forget what the Toyota was, Avalon maybe?
Right. Made in the U.S.
Yeah, made in North Carolina, and basically the engine and the transmission and like the differentials and like the all the running gear was all manufactured in Japan, and then but like the body parts were all. It was Japanese steel, sheet metal sent here. The sheet metal is punched out in North Carolina. The frames are punched out and assembled in North Carolina. The car is totally assembled in North Carolina, just made out of Japanese parts and some German parts because the Japanese are like, well, the Germans do a better job at us making this particular widget for the car. Like the Japanese are pretty darn smart, when it comes to these engineering things.
Well, it looks like we do have a caller on the line. Unscreened caller, what's on your mind?
Hi, name's Paul. I wanted to call in while Mark was still around.
Paul.
Realize you're getting close to the end of the show.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for the good well wishes for the holidays.
Yeah, well, hey, good wishes right back to you. Want to stay in touch. Anyway, I realized you've been talking about a lot of different things today, and I really, like the take on it. But I thought I'd call in just to put in a good word for people that seem to be getting trashed. For instance, I have a question, okay? What did the black people do to warrant the treatment they've gotten, let's say, in the American South, from the 19th century on?
Can you talk about something specific so that I understand what we're saying? I mean, obviously, black people were, by and large, shipped over here against their will.
Right. So in other words, they didn't do anything to deserve the treatment they got.
Yeah, like slavery. Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, the principle that if somebody is getting attacked, it's because of something they did is not always true, right?
Right.
And that there are people who can hate others just because they hate others for some weird reason, and doesn't have anything to do with justice, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Okay, so my next question is, what did the Jews do to be attacked historically for the last several thousand years?
I'm sure people would come up with all kinds of things, but I'm going to go ahead and say nothing.
I don't think it's ever justified to attack someone unless you're defending yourself, like you are stopping yourself from being harmed, and that's why you attack them.
Right. Now, obviously, we're going to the Middle East, right? But I just wanted to put the principle forth that just because somebody hates somebody, they may not have a good reason for it. They may make up stuff. They may pull things out of the air. They may put themselves in situations whereby then they can blame others for their own problems. My point is, Israel is a country, okay? It's the only country on the planet that people feel perfectly justified in saying it's illegitimate and shouldn't exist.
Well, it's also one of the only countries in the planet that was made the way that it was. Like, I think that it's the only one that is still, making the people that used to live there be prisoners and killing so many of them. Did you know that almost every single male Palestinian has been in jail before? What did those people do to deserve that? Probably not a lot.
Well, let me ask you. Have you ever heard of Pakistan?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Pakistan was a completely made-up country. Okay. It never existed before in history. But yet, because of the tension between the Hindus and the Muslims in India, Pakistan was carved out and was created. And millions of people were thrown out because they were the wrong religion.
Yeah, it sounds really messed up.
Nobody has ever said that Pakistan has no reason to exist, and the Muslims should not have created Pakistan, and they should have gone somewhere else. Only Israel gets that treatment.
I don't even think that's true. Like we just aren't in that side of the world where we hear that kind of news all the time. When I have a friend, the one
nobody cares about Pakistan because they're all a bunch of brown people who don't speak English. Well, actually, the Indians do speak English, so there you go. But it's maybe not their first language.
Well,
all I'm saying is that
just because it's not something you hear about very often doesn't mean that no one ever says that. Like I don't know enough of the history about what used to be a western part of India, and then it turned into Pakistan. But I actually have heard people discussing that topic before who are actually Pakistani. It's just that we don't hear about it. So I just don't get the point you're making.
How about we say this? That Israel receives far more flack for its existence than any other country. Maybe Taiwan.
I just don't like think that's some kind of like great amazing point that he thinks it is, considering
I'd like
the fact
to hear
that,
wherever he's going with it. That's what I want to
considering the fact that it's not the same argument that people are making in every single different country. Like everything is its own situation. And in the issue with Israel, people have a right to be upset with their treatment of Pakistan, and no, they don't have the right to say, oh, let's kill Israelis, let's hate Israelis. It's more about the government, but I think it's just a little sensitive to just be, oh, I can't hear any criticism of Israel because, well, it gets too much criticism. Well, you maybe think about why it's getting so much criticism.
Well, I have as much credibility. I mean, I've been an anarchist long enough to know that all governments are evil. Okay, let me put that on the table. Okay, so I'm not defending the Israeli government per se as a government because all of them are in the same boat. However, the Jewish people had been under the gun for, millennia, okay, because they refused to bow down to the gods of the nations that don't like they didn't bow down to the Roman gods. They don't bow down to any of the other gods. No, we got our own gods. Thank you very much. Okay, so Jews as a religious group, became a people, and they hold in common their own interests.
Well, I mean, it's just like they should have stayed and held on to the land they lived on, and if they didn't and they moved, I just don't understand why these are the only people that if you talk about their government doing something that's really terrible, people are like, oh, so you hate the people that are Jews, and including anarchists. It's crazy. Like, no, that's not what anyone is saying. People are saying that the government bombing people into oblivion is bad. Is that something that's super, super terrible to say?
Well,
it's not.
If you look at the history of that region, there's an awful lot of complexity. And the last thing that happened in 2005 was that Israel left Gaza. Okay. They said, fine, okay, we'll leave you guys to work it out on your own. And they left thriving businesses in Gaza with the idea that, the people there could make a go of it and turn themselves into a little Lebanon. But no, what the residents did was that they destroyed all the infrastructure that the Israelis built because it was built by Jews.
That's ridiculous. Like, you're obviously simplifying something that you're trying to say, oh, it's too complicated for me to understand, but let me tell you this story without any type of, anything to back it up, where I'm just obviously really simplifying the situation yourself. Like,
you
don't think that
happened to the flour export industry.
So you don't think that being put into prison at rates of almost every single male in the country has anything to do with, the country not prospering?
Sounds like Gaza's at war with Israel.
Well, it's been Free Talk Live. We're on every night, 7 to 10 Eastern, live some of those nights. But we won't be live tomorrow, but we'll be back live Saturday. And you can call in and bring up whatever you want. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete. So it's great for merchants.